Douluo, the master of the nuclear soul. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1: Uncontrollable Radiation Sources. Douluo Continent, Xingda Great Forest. One of the three most famous soul beasts inhabiting the Douluo Continent. The area is so large. It is almost equal to the land area of the Bara Kingdom, spanning the borders of the Sharingan Empire and the Xingluo Empire. Among them, 2/5 of the area is in the Sharingan Empire. The other 3/5 is in the Xingluo Empire. It is a huge primeval forest with complex terrain. There are wetlands, swamps, etc. The soul beasts there are also extremely terrifying. The closer to the center of the forest, the stronger the soul beasts are. There are even soul beasts of 100,000 years. Any soul master, as long as he is strong enough and lucky, can find the most suitable soul ring for himself. An Uchiha Uranium stood in the outermost bushes of the Xingda Great Forest, staring at the interior of the forest. Behind the bushes, there were towering trees that gradually became strange, and there were soul beasts representing death. It was strange why he stood here, but it was his own choice. Since the awakening of the martial soul, his parents suddenly fell ill at a certain time period, very suddenly and abruptly. In fact, it is not a serious illness, nothing more than fatigue, nausea, dizziness, and insomnia. But after opening the awakened martial spirit again, he felt something was wrong, or it could be said that this family had already made him feel inharmonious from the beginning. His last name is Uchiha, which is okay, but the problem is that this is Douluo Continent. As he grew up, he also understood the history of his family. His ancestor was a powerful martial spirit titled Douluo, who mastered a lot of self-created soul skills of fire nature, and also had many special secret skills, but because of the long time or because they had been hidden for a long time, they never appeared in the world again. Although there are ancestors, it is obvious that there is no record of their origins. This is also a point that shocked Uchiha Uranium very much. He is the second person to travel through time, and his ancestor is the first person to travel through time. It's just that it's a bit outrageous for the Sharingan to be directly assimilated into the original martial spirit, but when you think of the God realm above Douluo Continent, and there are other worlds outside the God realm, you don't feel so much when you think about it. After all, no one can explain this thing clearly. Since you are here, you can only do this. When he was 6 years old, the family also directly started a separate martial soul awakening ceremony. The process went smoothly and he successfully awakened his martial soul. Unfortunately, it was not a twin martial soul, but there was one thing that surprised him. The martial soul of the Sharingan he awakened seemed to be different from that of other people in the family. Uchiha Uranium didn't know exactly how it was different. In the eyes of others, the Magatama in his eyeball did not seem to be in the shape of a Magatama, but a fan-shaped icon that was similar to a smaller version, with a rounded and protruding top and a sunken inside. However, compared to other members of the family, his father was very happy and called it a mutant martial soul. He also said that the family had not had a mutant martial soul for a long time, and the two mutant martial souls that had appeared before were each extremely powerful and special. Today, he was fortunate to see a new mutant martial soul born in the family, and it was his own child. He was very happy and asked the family historian to write down this moment in history. But along with the awakening of the martial soul, it was also the beginning of a nightmare. I don't know when it started, but it seems that the maid's low-grade fever, or the servant's unexplained coma, caused a strange change in the whole family. That is, the family members were easy to get sick. Unknown changes occurred. With fever, more and more people became weak. The clan leader, Uchiha, the father of Uchiha Uranium, stood up. Whether it was the treatment of the soul master or the external means of tonic, they could only delay or temporarily suppress it, but not cure it. For this condition that was neither poison nor martial soul means, Uchiha was completely helpless. No matter how precise his Sharingan was, he could not see what specific changes were happening inside the human body. The diagnosis of the treatment soul master also confirmed one point, that the bodies of these servants with low soul power were deteriorating. It seemed that a certain threshold was reached. One night, the servant who fell into coma first began to vomit violently, had a high fever, and bleeding, and was accompanied by varying degrees of anemia. As if tortured, these servants with low soul power were suffering unimaginable pain. At the same time, Uchiha Uranium opened his martial soul Sharingan while looking in the mirror, observing the strange shape of the jade in his pupil, and gradually developed a bad premonition in his heart. The single-shaped fan-shaped icon, with a convex outer circle and a concave inner circle, does not explain anything by itself, but if you look at it according to the three jades, it rotates in the pupil in the shape of a Chinese character, like a fen blade, but to be precise, it is more like some kind of warning sign on Earth in the previous life. What is it? Thinking of the weak servant who fainted for no reason, was weak all over, vomited, and had a high fever, Uchiha Uranium suddenly thought that these symptoms only appeared slowly after he awakened his martial soul and awakened this strange pattern. And this pattern may be the culprit that brought these negative factors, or his mutant martial soul may not be developing in a good direction, but in a direction of deterioration. What is it? What do these symptoms represent in the previous life? Poison? Or cancer? Wait, cancer. As if thinking of something, Uchiha Uranium felt that he had grasped the key point. Following this line of thought, could there be some kind of irritation reaction inside their bodies? Cancer does cause a lot of sweating, fatigue, vomiting and other symptoms, which can indeed be compared with the current situation. So, what is the cause? Unconsciously, Uchiha Uranium looked at the mirror again, looking at himself in the mirror, silver white hair flowing naturally beside his ears, fair skin with a healthy blush, and the pair of rotating single Magatama Sharingan. Everything seemed so natural, but with a hint of weirdness. The more I look at my eyes, the more they look like a certain icon. Suddenly, a thought flashed through my mind. If the white of the eye is yellow, would it be more suitable for this black fan-shaped Magatama? Warning icon? The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. I know. The boy was silent for a while. It shouldn't be wrong. If it is that thing, it does match the panic of the family now. Although there is no higher soul power level soul master coma, I am afraid that the family has been infected in the past few days. If it continues like this, I am afraid that everyone will die one day. I will not be surprised. Uchiha Uranium raised his head and said to himself. Slowly speaking, he stood up and began to pack up. It shouldn't be wrong. His eyes will make everyone around him die in pain. Now, he has to leave this home, and leave immediately. His eyes made him recall completely. He had seen this fan-shaped icon very few times, but every time he saw this warning, he would immediately stay away, fearing that he would be contaminated. That is, nuclear radiation. Chapter 2, Stay Away from Human Population. If Uchiha Uranium guessed correctly, he was probably a walking radiation source, constantly emitting energy in the form of particles from the inside out. Not only contact, as long as he exists, all the people around him will continue to absorb these radiations, and eventually develop various problems, with all kinds of pain in the body, suffering from cancer, death, genetic mutation and other pains, and die tragically. He didn't want to see such an ending. So he left. As long as he stayed in the clan, everyone would die, except that people with high soul power would die later. Even if it was not for his parents, it was for himself. It was hard to guarantee that one day a clan member would find that his mutated Sharingan was the root cause of their absorption of radioactive microscopic particle flow, causing infertility and their own death, and then kill himself in advance. Not to mention that he had traveled through time for 6 years. The grace of his parents' upbringing was vivid in his mind, and feelings could not be faked. It was better for him to leave by himself. Therefore, there is the scene now. A child, carrying a package that is a bit heavy for him, is standing in the bushes hesitantly. The soul beasts in the Star Dou Great Forest are not herbivores. Once he walks in, it will be difficult to get out. After a moment, Uchiha Uranium gritted his teeth, took out a dagger with a cold light from the package, tied the package to his back, and walked slowly into the interior with his hands free and a light and vigilant posture. He can't go anywhere, no matter whether it is the clan land or not. As long as there are people around him, or even not just around him, as long as he appears in a town or a village, then it won't be long before the peaceful life of these ordinary people will be broken by him, and endless deaths and ugly and disgusting flesh decay and mutation will accompany them throughout their lives. Only uninhabited places, only the Star Dou Great Forest where no one has set foot, is his future destination. It's just a pity. He also fantasized about the 5-village fight and the eye legend. After all, it's a Sharingan. Maybe when his kaleidoscope is opened, all the Shrek of the Spirit Hall will crawl. It's really a pity. After entering the bushes, everything around began to change. Although it is still a long way from the real Xingdao Great Forest, the vegetation and other things are almost the same. The ground began to become damp and the surroundings became a little stuffy. Obviously, the outside world is less than 100 meters away from here, the air is pleasant and sunny, but the inside has become completely different. It's more like a rainforest inside, with a smell of rotting vegetation. The air is very humid and hot. The sunlight shines on the ground after penetrating the gaps between the layers of dense leaves. The dense vegetation grows extremely dense and prospers because of the abundant rain. The vines are entangled and the roots are tangled, forming many obstacles. After walking for only an hour, Uchiha Uranium's silver-white hair was already wet with sweat. The slightly curled ends of his hair were tightly attached to the sides of his hair. His fair skin was somewhat uncomfortable under the scorching sun. Large beads of sweat unconsciously flowed down his forehead, flowing down his nose and passing through the corners of his mouth, with a hint of saltiness. The boy was wearing a somewhat luxurious outfit, blue and white trousers and long shirt, deerskin boots on his feet, and the trouser legs were rolled up several times, exposing his ankles to prevent the dirty mud and rotten branches and leaves on the ground from getting on them. Fortunately, his family was powerful and well off, and he also had a space-type soul guide, but it was already full of things, otherwise he would not have to throw the package on his back into it, and he would not have to be so tired. Originally, after understanding his special situation, he quickly packed up the things he needed for survival in the wild. After all, he was reborn and had watched several episodes of Bear Grylls and Days. Although he had not practiced it himself, he could still do it by imitating. Not to mention that he is a one-ring soul master. After the baptism of soul rings and the physical strengthening of the opening of the Sharingan martial soul, his current physical fitness at the age of 6 may be stronger than the body of the otaku who did not exercise for many years in his previous life. However, he also knew that his small actions may have been seen by his father. After all, his father is the patriarch of a clan and his strength must be strong. He is just a child. It is very obvious that he packed his things and prepared his luggage to leave, but his father did not show up and did not stop him. So before leaving, he talked to himself for a while, just to tell his parents the reason and his intention to leave. He felt guilty. If he had noticed the changes in his body earlier, I am afraid that the servant who had taken good care of him before would not have fallen in the hospital bed and endured the torture of radiation. In fact, looking back now, he could have asked his father to open up a place to live in a deserted place in advance, so that he would not have to run to the Xingdao Great Forest to suffer and endure the risk of death at any time. But the guilt at that time overwhelmed him, and he made such a move in a fit of anger. As for why he was so sure that his father saw everything, it was nonsense. In his Space Soul Guide, there was a pile of books such as Soul Beast Encyclopedia, Martial Soul Knowledge, Uchiha Family History, Forest Survival Encyclopedia, Trap Making Manual, Soul Power Cultivation Tips, etc., which were clearly prepared. Don't think too much about it. I'm here now. Suddenly, he stopped and looked around suspiciously. It was very quiet. There were no soul beasts as he imagined, nor were there any scary mosquitoes and insects. There was nothing, except plants. Did I run into some thousand-year soul beast territory? Uchiha Uranium became alert. Although the outermost area was generally where soul beasts lived for 10 to 100 years, there was no guarantee that a 1,000-year soul beast that had failed in a struggle and was expelled from the territory would run to this low-level area. This was not a game, and nothing would change. If he ran into one, he would probably have to die here. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, nothing happened. Forget it. This area is not a good place to camp and survive. It's too humid. I'm going to walk to both sides and look for other ways. I can't go in anymore. After thinking for a while, Uchiha Uranium made this decision. If he guessed correctly, there are all kinds of areas in the Xingdao Great Forest. Now in a wetland environment similar to a rainforest, there must be a forest environment suitable for him, or something else, anyway, not this kind. Turning around and continuing to move forward with difficulty, he pushed aside the green leaves that blocked his vision, and then tried to take bigger steps on the wet ground covered with many vegetation. Pushing aside the leaves, Uchiha Uranium was disappointed to find that there were muddy stagnant water puddles in front of him. Bubbles kept appearing in the puddles and then dissipated. A strong and unpleasant smell emanated from the surroundings. Tall broad-leaved trees grew on both sides, and together with low bushes, they formed a road that could not be moved forward. It seems that I can only change lanes. The boy subconsciously gritted his teeth, feeling a little anxious. He had to take a detour and go back. This back and forth wasted a lot of his time. The latest novels are first published on 69shushu.com. Forget it. With a sigh, the boy turned around and continued walking along the road he came from. However, he did not notice that in the stagnant water behind him, a group of dark brown toads with tumors all over their bodies emerged. They climbed out of the water one after another and ran away in the opposite direction of the boy, jumping away from him as if he were a scourge. Chapter 3: A Forest Without Soul Beasts. He encountered a fork in the road. No, it wasn't really a fork in the road. In this natural soul beast forest where no human beings live, there were no roads trampled by humans. In front of him, there were actually only two forest paths that could be walked on, but the degree of danger was unknown. Left or right? Uchiha Uranium frowned. Although he had not encountered soul beasts at the moment, it was necessary to race against time. It was noon now and it was still safe. Once night fell, all kinds of terrifying carnivorous soul beasts began to hunt, and he might not be able to resist them in his current condition. And if he took the wrong road and unknowingly walked into the soul beast's lair, it would be too embarrassing. Left? After hesitating for a moment, Uchiha Uranium decided to change his route slightly and continue to move forward to the left. Because the ground was very muddy, the surrounding vines and tree roots, rotten leaves and difficult slippery stones made his progress very slow. The sun in the sky was getting hotter and hotter. If it weren't for the dense branches and leaves, I'm afraid his delicate skin would have started to hurt. He had gotten used to the bad smell in the air. He had never thought that the Xingdao Great Forest would have such a wetland swamp. He had originally thought that it was all trees and forests. It was estimated that there would be no clean water source in this place. Even if there was, it was a place that many soul beasts had to pass through. At the latest tonight, he would start to survive in the wild. Water source, food, and shelter. He had not achieved any of the three elements of survival. Uchiha Uranium could only hope that the road ahead would be easier. He was not too worried about food and water. The Space Soul Guide would at least be enough for him to eat for about 10 days. What really stumped him was that he had no place to sleep. He was really afraid that he would fall asleep and wake up in the stomach of a soul beast the next day. Isn't it said that the Xingdao Great Forest is a paradise for soul beasts? How come we haven't seen any soul beasts in more than 2 hours? After a while, Uchiha Uranium found a relatively clean stone with a slightly flat top, climbed up, sat on it and began to rest. The doubts about the soul beasts disappearing for no reason still remained in his heart and did not dissipate. This is definitely not normal. Compared to a forest, the density of soul beasts must be relatively large. Even if he is slow-witted, he would not think that a forest without soul beasts is normal. There must be something wrong. Is it really in the territory of a high-level soul beast? After thinking about it, Uchiha Uranium could only come to this conclusion. There was no other way. Based on the current observations, this was the only reason, but this possibility was not very high. High-level soul beasts also need to eat. Now he can't even meet a low-level herbivorous soul beast. Could it be that this high-level soul beast is starving? What's the problem? Forget it, forget it. Let's not think about it for now. Hurry up and eat something, and then continue walking. He has been wandering around this place for more than 2 hours and has not eaten anything. Originally, he thought that food and water should be eaten when he is about to run out of energy, but he seems to have overestimated his endurance. The food was a simple naan made of dried meat, nuts, flour, eggs, and seasonal vegetables. It was very large, about 60 centimeters when unfolded, and round in shape. It was thin on both sides, about 2 to 3 centimeters, and thick in the middle, about 6 centimeters. It was durable and was found in his kitchen at home. It tasted very good, but he had to chew it carefully. At his age, if he ate too fast, he would accidentally get his teeth stuck. Besides, he had a small appetite. It was estimated that such a piece of bread would be enough for him to eat for 2 to 3 days. After eating for about a quarter of an hour, Uchiha Uranium burped with satisfaction, then took a few sips of water. With that, the rest time was over. He had to continue walking forward. This place was not suitable for resting at night. The ground was full of mud and water, unless he slept on a tree. After packing up his luggage, he turned over and walked down the boulder and continued walking forward. He pushed away the plants that were in the way, split the thorns with a sharp machete, pulled off the spider webs wrapped around his body, and patted off the slippery moss. Uchiha Uranium walked in this uninhabited jungle, trying to open up a path for walking. The dense jungle that covered the sky suddenly became sparse, revealing the blue sky. The sound of the river flowing gradually became clearer, and soon a small river appeared in the boy's field of vision. The river was full of dense unknown water plants on both sides. The river was not turbulent, but the water was a little turbid. Dark green floating algae floated on the water surface, moving forward with the flow of water. It was unclear how deep the small river was, but the river was a bit wide. He didn't have any tools to help him, so it was difficult to pass through this river. The boy knew that this river was not something he could cross. There were no trees growing on both sides, and he couldn't move the rotten tree trunks to make a bridge, not to mention the unknown dangers in the water. He didn't dare to step into the river easily. Moreover, this river could nourish so many floating algae, which must be eutrophication of the water body. The floating algae covered the water surface, and the large-scale reproduction of algae would cause hypoxia in the water. Ordinary fish would definitely not survive in this river. There is no artificial salvage here. It seems that the entire river surface has not been covered. There must be herbivorous soul beasts that feed on floating algae. If there are herbivorous soul beasts, there should be carnivorous ones. I am afraid that this river cannot be drunk. There are too many impurities in the water and the water quality is turbid. Uchiha Uranium knew that he did not have anything that could filter the water source. It was difficult to drink it safely and without pollution with the filtering method he knew. However, this river was the only water source he had found so far. If he waited until the clean water source he brought was finished, he would have to drink it no matter how dirty it was. What should I do? Uchiha Uranium looked at this turbid river, and then looked around. There was no environment worth borrowing to cross this river. For a moment, he was a little entangled. Should I risk crossing the river or go back? After a moment, Uchiha Uranium made a decision that he could not go back, otherwise all his time would be wasted on finding the way. He had to walk along the edge of the river. This section was the area of 10 100-year-old soul beasts. With his physical fitness and soul skills, he was enough to face most of the dangers. Moreover, water sources are a must for living things. If you can encounter a soul beast, you can follow the traces and live in the ready-made nest directly, completely saving yourself from making shelters and demarcating safe areas. After determining the route, Uchiha Uranium began to move forward. He did not walk directly by the river, but kept a distance to ensure a certain degree of safety. The surrounding trees seemed to be close to the water source. The trunks and roots of the trees were covered with moss, which was very slippery. If the boy climbed the slippery and high roots alone, he would be at risk of falling if he was not careful. What's more, he had a heavy package on his back. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Uchiha Uranium walked along the river carefully. The river was flowing, carrying duckweed and floating algae. The banks were lush and green, and the vegetation was quite dense. He walked for about 2 hours, and it was getting dark. The river gradually became wider, the water became clearer, and the ground began to become a little harder, no longer the kind of ground where you would sink half your foot into it when you stepped on it. Not only did the river become wider, but the trees on both sides also became sparse, and the dense vegetation was replaced by weeds and bushes. The tall trees retreated, and the sun shone directly in. The hot and humid air was blown away by the cool breeze at some point. Uchiha Uranium looked back, looked at the path he had opened up behind him, the complex and twisted vines and roots, and then looked at the refreshing forest lake in front of him. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, he got out. As expected, he guessed correctly. Since it was running water, it must have a source. If he found the source, it must be clean water. He had had enough of this muddy ground with pits everywhere he stepped on. Finally, I'm out. It's really strange that there aren't even any flying insects in this wetland rainforest environment. No, how come there isn't even a soul beast drinking water in this place, this water source? Around this forest lake, you can clearly see the footprints of animals, but the creepy thing is that there is nothing around. It doesn't look like a soul beast paradise at all, but more like a hell without life. Where am I? Chapter 4: A Starry Night. There was really not enough information for him to make a judgment. Uchiha Uranium didn't understand why there were no soul beasts in the soul beast forest. It couldn't be as ridiculous as saying there was no wife in the wife cake, right? It was getting dark. After an afternoon of rushing, he was exhausted. This was not an ordinary walk. He had been shuttling through the dense jungle. The air was extremely humid and hot, and the vines were entangled. If he was not careful, he would be tripped. The ground under his feet was very soft, and the ground near the water source was full of pits. The rotten leaves accumulated over time, and the slippery tree roots all greatly reduced his forward speed and made him consume too much physical strength. Being able to hold on until night was already considered a soul ring, and the Sharingan had strengthened his physical fitness. Uchiha Uranium's eyes condensed slightly, and he glanced around. After a while, he found a place that looked okay. But when he was about to set up camp, he saw another place where a tree with slender branches and leaves but very dense was broken in half. The crown fell to the ground, and the branches and leaves on both sides fell to the ground, revealing a natural hole in the middle. Above and behind were dense and heavy leaves. Uchiha Uranium touched the leaves, which were a little dry, not as moist as he imagined. The broken part was still connected to form a perfect triangle in front of him, and the location of the crown was a very ideal residence. However, this kind of shelter cannot be stayed for a long time. It is close to the water source and the ground is moist. If you sleep for a long time, it is easy to get cold. But it can only be used tonight. Without further ado, Uchiha Uranium immediately began to tidy up the shelter, trimming some protruding branches and leaves to make this natural hole less than 3 square meters and more than 1 meter high more flat. Then he used the machete to cut a branch as thick as a calf and placed it at the broken part of the tree to prevent it from collapsing suddenly in the middle of the night. Then he took out a roll of snow-white, light-looking cloth from the package. It looked more like the skin of some soul beast. It was crystal clear and had a scent of tanning and special processing. Uchiha Uranium spread the roll of leather on the ground. The last and most critical step was to set up a night watch trap. The shelter could indeed allow him to rest comfortably, but rest did not mean safety. There was no completely safe place in the Star Dou Forest. As long as he dared to sleep without taking protective measures, the soul beasts passing by would dare to give him a midnight snack. But now that the sky was dark and there was no light source, it was difficult for him to rely on the surrounding environment to make a simple trap. But if he did not have a certain degree of confidence, would he dare to go to the Star Dou Forest to survive? His confidence came from his first 100-year soul ring. First soul skill, radiation trap. Uchiha Uranium muttered in his heart, feeling the soul power in his body begin to consume and gather in his hands. It seemed that the power had reached its peak. He could no longer feel the other consumption, which meant that the trap in his hand had been completed. Next, he only needed to throw it out to complete the trap. His soul skill was not originally called radiation trap, but blast trap. After he awakened his martial soul and opened the 10th level full soul power, his father quickly helped him obtain the first soul ring. The soul beast he killed at that time was called Douluo Beast, a soul beast that was good at using ground spike traps to hunt, and defended with a hard shell all over its body, and could spit fire from its mouth. This soul beast is very rare. It is a variant of the rare soul beast Uchiha Beast. Originally, his father hoped to use his blood affinity for fire to awaken his soul skill that can spit fire, but in the end, he got the trap making. This soul skill allows him to make an invisible and extremely explosive ground spike trap in his hand. It can only be placed above a complete 1 square meter of space. After being placed, this ground spike trap will sink into the ground within 3 seconds, and there is no problem at all on the surface. However, once a creature of a certain weight walks on the ground spike trap, it will fly out from the bottom to the top with hot ground spikes containing unstable explosive properties, and at the same time has the properties of high-speed surprise, explosion, high temperature, spikes, etc. The explosion range is very large. A ground spike can cause a range of more than 10 square meters. Once it explodes, it will be accompanied by high-temperature flames and red-hot fragments. The effect is almost the same as that of modern high-explosive grenades, and even better in some aspects. Unfortunately, the range is very large, but the ground spike trap still takes about 1 second from sensing to activation to firing. As long as the creatures in this range run fast enough, they can completely escape the maximum killing range. It can be said to be a model of high delay and high damage. As for why it is now called the radiation trap, that is because after activating his mutant martial soul, the radiation eye, the trap becomes a radiation source that continuously emits radioactive microwave particles. The function is still the same as before, but it adds a new property, radioactive elements. In other words, once it explodes, The ground spike trap will cause great radiation pollution to the surrounding area, and no one can escape. As for how large this range is, Uchiha Uranium has not tested it yet, but it should not be small. So the trap he is going to set next is this. The first trap, he placed behind the shelter, in front of the leaves, to prevent the soul beast from directly attacking him from the front. The second trap was placed at the back on the left, and the third was placed at the front on the right. Finally, he marked these 3 positions to prevent himself from accidentally stepping on them and being killed by the traps he placed. Although he is not afraid of radiation, the high temperature and hot spikes do not recognize people. After doing all this, Uchiha Uranium felt that he had used up most of his soul power. At this time, the last bit of heat from the sun also disappeared on the horizon. Night fell. Uchiha Uranium looked at the darkening surroundings, and somehow, a feeling of loneliness surged in his heart. Half a month ago, he was still studying in the clan. After half a month of travel, he finally arrived at the Star Dou Forest. He obviously did not have this feeling on the road before, but now, a vague sourness is fermenting in his heart. He knows that he is really far away from human habitation now. Family, partners, father and mother, all are not around, only himself. Forget it, don't think about such sad things. I don't want a mutant martial soul like the radiation eye, which makes me unable to find a wife in the future. Damn, even if I go to a prostitute, maybe she will rot and die as soon as I touch her. Uchiha Uranium shook his head inside as he looked at the deserted surroundings. He raised his head and saw that it was late at night. He heard the howling of wolves from a far distance, and then looked at the sky. The stars were shining in the sky, twinkling. This was a beautiful scene he had never seen in his previous life. He once thought that the stars he saw in his childhood would never come back. Heavy industry, air pollution, etc., completely covered the night with a layer of gray gauze. Now, he was half lying on the ground, leaning against a big tree, looking at the night sky with a dazed look, as if he had found his childhood again. After an unknown amount of time, Uchiha Uranium felt that the tip of his nose was a little wet. He wanted to rub his nose, and then he raised his head. It was a drop of dew dripping from the top of his head. The latest novel is published on the 69th book forum. The night view of the sky is still bright, and the light is even brighter than before. The stars that cannot be seen during the day are now twinkling like a competition. He has never seen such a scene on Earth. Perhaps this is his lost childhood. And Douluo Continent is his new life. For the first time, Uchiha Uranium felt that coming to the Star Forest was a correct decision. If he had stayed in the clan land, he would study during the day and practice at night, gradually becoming stronger and becoming famous. Perhaps he would never raise his head again and look at the beautiful night sky. For the first time, he felt that such a life might not be as bad as he thought. "Oh hell, I'm sleepy, let's go to bed." He stretched, took off his dirty shoes, put them outside, and then went into the shelter. Before going to sleep, Uchiha Uranium took a last look at the night sky, then lay down, closed his eyes, and fell asleep quietly. If this is how my life will be in the future, it won't be bad. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chapter 5: The Reason for Dispersing the Soul Beast. The next morning, the sun shone on the shelter, through the layers of branches and leaves. The speckled light with a soft and warm breath shone on Uchiha Uranium's face, waking him up from his sleep. To his surprise, he originally thought that his first night would be spent in tension and anxiety. After all, this is the outskirts of the dangerous Star Dou Forest. But the fact is that he slept soundly, without any anxiety or fear, as if this place was as safe as home. No difference. A quarter of an hour later, Uchiha Uranium packed up his luggage, tied his belt, and prepared to start the journey today. Although this place is very good, the water source is clean and very close to him, and such a large forest lake, then the large amount of groundwater in this area must be mainly concentrated here, so within a certain range, he will definitely not be able to find a second water source of this scale. But this place was too open, with a large open space. If he wanted to build a house, it would be perfect. But he was not capable enough to live here. The water source was where soul beasts gathered, and he was not sure he could deal with many soul beasts. Although the traps were useful, the soul beasts would not gather together to send their heads forward. In the final analysis, he was not capable enough. Uchiha Uranium held the big tree that was broken in half and began to observe the surroundings. He wanted to find a thick terrain, preferably a cave or other place to live, and then there would be a water source around, and it would be best if there were some weak herbivorous soul beasts in it, so that he could shelter from the wind and rain and have a place for daily life. If he really couldn't find it, he could only turn back and find a place near the water source to build a shelter. He had already thought about it, cutting some hardwood and trying to make one in the middle of the tree. Uchiha Uranium thought about how to arrange the shelter in the future, and then took his hand away from the tree. Suddenly, he felt something strange on his palm. Withered, bleeding bark stuck to his hand. Huh? What's going on? Uchiha Uranium clapped his hands hurriedly, slapped off the withered bark in his hands, then turned to look at the tree that was a little abnormal. His expression gradually became solemn. At this time, he also found some abnormalities, such as the leaves on the crown of the tree, which had all changed color. Although some branches and leaves were dull yesterday, they were still green after all. But now, they have turned completely gray. He picked up a leaf, and before he could use any force, it broke with a crack. This tree was the same. It had no vitality like yesterday, and it was lingering on like an old man who was about to die. The gap between the day before yesterday and today was so big that it seemed as if time had flown by. Uchiha Uranium was stunned. He still didn't understand what had happened. How could this tree become like this and suddenly die? After a long time, he sighed. I understand. I finally know. No wonder I didn't see any soul beasts. It turns out that they are sensitive. Once they feel the energy fluctuations of nuclear radiation on me, they'll run away. No wonder. The soul beasts that can run away have all run away, and the plants can't run away. The nuclear radiation on my body really kills all animals and plants. Damn, I thought I could live the rest of my life safely by running to the Xingdao Great Forest. I didn't expect that I am still a destroyer of nature and die wherever I go. Damn. Slowly putting down the package, Uchiha Uranium loosened the burden on his body, took out the machete that had not been cleaned yet and was covered with mud and juice, and began to look for thicker trees around. He figured it all out. Just build a house here and don't go anywhere else. The radiation on his body can obviously help him disperse the soul beasts, which guarantees his safety to a large extent. It can be said that except for people with low perception like humans who can't feel the continuous radioactive substances on his body, other soul beasts don't even need to see him. As long as they are within a certain range, they will run as far as they can. He also recalled his memory about nuclear radiation and found that not only animals and plants, but also water sources can be polluted by nuclear radiation. In other words, although he did not touch the water source just now, after the whole night yesterday, this lake in the forest has already taken the shape of his Uchiha Uranium. Even if he left, the radiation would still be there. Other soul beasts would be directly infected as long as they drank the water in this lake. If they drank more, they would die faster. And the radiation would continue to transfer to the soul beasts that had eaten and drunk the water here, and then cause mutations in the body, or enter the countdown of life. This is very scary. He himself is a walking destroyer of nature. So he did not leave, and stayed here. Anyway, no soul beast would come to trouble it. He would slowly build his own shelter, and then learn book knowledge and practice quietly. When he reaches the 20th level of soul power, he will find a way to kill the soul beast. He is already like this, so he can just find a soul beast. He does not want to fight for hegemony or the strongest in the whole continent. At this time, Uchiha Uranium suddenly thought of a funny thing. If he became the king, and then one day he held a meeting that all the ministers had to attend, but halfway through the meeting, all the ministers died directly due to radiation infection, that would be too ridiculous. Thinking about it, Uchiha Uranium sighed. Forget it, the biggest soul beast threat in the Star Dou Great Forest is no longer a threat to him, so he should take it slowly. I heard that practicing to the title of Douluo can prolong life. It seems that according to the original book, one can live to 300 to 500 years old. Just thinking about it, he felt that it was not bad. Although he was only 6 years old, at least it was acceptable to live an old age life here in advance. An hour later. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Uchiha Uranium threw down the machete that was already somewhat bent, and looked around to see that there were only 3 trees that he had chopped down. Only then did he feel that it was really stupid not to bring an axe. He was going to the forest, so why didn't he bring an axe? Unfortunately, he only had this machete with him, and he couldn't just rely on his little dagger to stab them one by one, right? After thinking about it, Uchiha Uranium decided to outsmart himself. Since he had a soul skill, Could he use the burst effect caused by the soul skill to dismember the 3 trees that had been chopped down on the ground first? As for the method of action, it was natural to build a trap next to the tree, and then push the tree over so that it pressed on the trap and triggered it directly. After confirming the idea, he immediately took action. It was not difficult to make a soul skill trap. It was similar to a game. It was read first, and then it appeared in the hand. Finally, it was just a matter of finding a place to put it. With his soul power, he can only place 3 to 4 traps a day. If he places more than that, he will not be able to do it. His soul power consumption is very serious. Fortunately, this trap is powerful enough. Just one ground spike successfully blows up the tree. Although there are many flaws on the surface, they are all caused by small stones scattered after the explosion of the stone. But he has achieved his goal of separating the crown and the trunk. The trunk can be used to lay the foundation for the house, but what can the crown be used for? Fortunately, this is a world with soul power. If he was just a 6-year-old child in the modern world, let alone dragging the trunk to the designated location, he couldn't even cut wood in the sun. But unfortunately, he is a child who has been blessed by both the Sharingan and the Soul Ring. At this age, he is already invincible. Chapter 6, Skeletons of Dead Soul Beasts. A little more than 2 hours later, the sun stood at its highest position in the sky, emitting light and heat wantonly, and it was noon. Uchiha Uranium wiped his sweat, looked at the tree trunk standing in the designated position, and nodded with some satisfaction. That's right, as long as 10 days or half a month, this simple house will probably be completed. But there is a biggest problem: he lacks tools. The logging just now has caused him a lot of trouble. The blade of the knife is bent. He has no logging tools in his hand, nor tools to handle logging tools. This makes him very embarrassed. If he is the kind of person who comes to the forest with a bunch of props, it would be very comfortable, and he would not be at a loss like this. Well, take a break and eat something. There is no way he didn't bring a system with him when he traveled through time. The wood is all put away. In the afternoon, peel the bark, dry it for a few days to dry the moisture, and then you can start to lay the foundation. Starting tomorrow, he will go to other places and find a way to get some tools. Thinking like this, a day passed quickly. It was not difficult to peel the bark. He had a dagger that was just the right length, and the bark was easy to handle. It was just that he was sweating all over after working all day. Fortunately, there was a forest lake nearby. In the evening, he took a bath downstream. If the water did not flow by itself, he would not dare to take a bath in the place where he would drink in the future. It was night. Just like yesterday, he was still in the same place as yesterday. Although the tree was almost dead, it was still possible to provide a sleeping environment. Although the weather was hot, it didn't matter to sleep outside. It was interesting to think about using the sky as a blanket and the ground as a bed. But it was just a thought. Every time when it was late at night, he began to recall his life in the tribe. Perhaps it was because humans are social animals with rich language, body movements and their own thoughts. When a person is alone, without communication, it is easier to fall into memories. Indeed, it was boring to live alone without any creatures with him, but he came here just to stay away from other creatures and prevent himself from hurting others unconsciously, right? Asking himself this question in his heart, Uchiha Uranium could feel a little bit of peace of mind. Yes, he did this to prevent the people he cared about from being hurt unconsciously by him, so that others could live a stable life. Tisk, why didn't I know that I was so noble? After self-deprecating, Uchiha Uranium fell into deep thought again. Forget it, go to bed. There are still many things to do tomorrow. Go to bed early and get up early. Thinking of this, Uchiha Uranium closed his eyes and stopped thinking about whether he was noble or not. He didn't have so much free time. It's better to wait until he settles down in the future. Uchiha Uranium got up at dawn, or got up from the ground. After all, there was really no bed. The purpose of today is to go around, which will probably only take a morning. The main thing is to collect wild fruits, fungi and other food materials in the forest. If you are lucky, there should be the corpses of hunted soul beasts. Of course, in his imagination, it should be more about exploring the nearby terrain to see if there are any bird nests, and maybe he can even take out a few bird eggs to eat. He said his own forest lake is the center point, and there were 4 directions around it. The south was the direction he came from, which meant that the south was a rainforest. Not to mention plants and animals, there were not many mosquitoes. The resources were so scarce that it was heartbreaking. However, there were a lot of vines. He would go there when he had time. After all, some thin vines could be used as strong ropes, and even when they were old, they could be made into rattan chairs. There were many uses, depending on how they were used. The remaining places to go were the north, west and east. Going to the east was the easiest, as it was very close. The west was more troublesome, as you had to go around the entire forest lake to get there. The north was okay, not too detour, but not close either. After thinking about it, he decided to go to the east to check the situation. After understanding his own nuclear radiation, Uchiha Uranium was completely relieved, as if he had taken a reassurance pill. For now, he can walk sideways in this area of 10-100-year soul beasts. As for the more terrifying areas of 1,000-year soul beasts and 10,000-year soul beasts, he thought it was better to forget it and not challenge the teeth of soul beasts with his delicate body. The wilderness survival version is over, now it is the Minecraft version. Without further ado, Uchiha Uranium set off immediately. Except for the necessary machete and empty package, he did not bring anything else. Other things were left in the open space to not add burden to himself. Splitting branches and leaves, crossing rocks, the boy gradually entered the forest. Uchiha Uranium's main purpose is food, so his attention is mainly focused on the treetops to see if there are any bird nests. He gave up on soul beasts. If they run too fast, they may smell the smell of his nuclear radiation from a few kilometers away, and then run away far away, just like before, without seeing a single beast shadow. The tree stood straight and straight. Uranium found that the deeper he went into the forest, the taller and thicker the trees became. According to his rough estimate, some trees could even reach 50 or 60 meters, almost reaching the sky. The sunlight here did not penetrate like a column. A faint mist began to spread in the forest at some point. Under this mist, the sunlight became somewhat weak. The mist was also full of the fresh scent of grass and trees. Although there were no birds or beasts, the crisp sound of flowing water and the crackling sound of leaves on the ground made the forest more quiet. Soon after, the boy went deep into the forest, surrounded by trees. Uranium stopped and looked around. Although there was some fog, it was not a big problem and would not make people lost. He had to make some marks so that he would not be unable to come back after going out. He cut a mark on the tree trunk close to the ground with a dagger, then looked around, and moved a few stones to form an arrow sign, pointing to the way back. This was done to prevent getting lost. In fact, he wanted to draw a map, but he didn't have tools like paper and pen, and he didn't have animal skins and charcoal. He couldn't remember so many terrains just by relying on his brain. After about 8 times of placing road signs, something strange finally appeared in the monotonous forest. He had given up the idea of taking bird eggs because the treetops were too high. Now walking in the forest was more like strolling, but he didn't expect that he would trip and fall to the ground while walking. When he patted the dirt off his body and stood up from the ground, he found that something was wrong. A section of white tree roots was right under his feet. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. White? With doubts, Uranium began to dig the soil, first digging on both sides, then grabbing the roots, and after silently cheering for a while, he pulled out all the problematic roots in one breath. It was a pale skeleton, about 2 meters long, curved, semicircular, with a sharp end and a rounded top. Uranium guessed that it was probably the rib of an unknown soul beast. If there is one, then are there others? With this guess, Uranium began to look around to determine the situation. The surroundings were ordinary woodlands, but it seemed that this kind of landform would only be produced after transformation. Uranium observed the surroundings and found that there was an obvious soil fault. It was not that the difference was very big, but it was like the difference between new soil and old soil. If you don't look carefully, you will miss this detail. But Uranium is a Sharingan martial spirit. In terms of vision alone, he has never seen anyone stronger than Sharingan. After watching for a while, Uranium came to a conclusion. This is the hunting ground of a high-level soul beast. Once, an unlucky soul beast was caught and eaten. It was very large, but it was not necessarily able to fight. After eating the soul beast, the predator dug the soil again and covered the bones. This reminded him of domestic cats, which would cover their poop with cat litter after defecation. Or the local dogs at home would also do the same thing. When they were outside, they would first use their hind legs to make a shallow pit, and then kick the soil again after defecation to cover the poop. Although they might not be able to bury it very deep, it was a habit after all. This speculation made Uranium nod his head, thinking that he was too smart, but suddenly he was stunned again. This was burying the body after eating, which was completely different from the example he gave. In this day and age, are there still high-quality soul beasts that eat people and bury their bodies? Chapter 7. A world no longer alone. More than an hour had passed since the previous soul beast skeleton incident. He simply placed marks around and continued to move forward. Time was precious. The soul beast had some bones that could be used. It would not be too late to collect them after returning. The most important thing was to explore the food source first, otherwise he would starve. The fog in the forest gradually faded, and as the sunlight became more and more intense, it soon dissipated without a trace. In addition to the soul beast skeleton he had just seen, he also saw some interesting scenes along the way. A deer-shaped soul beast ran away without choosing a path and rushed towards him. He was so scared that he thought he was going to die here. Forgive him for never having experienced a battle. At that time, the soul beast as tall as a person rushed at a speed of 80 miles per hour. Anyone would be a little dumbfounded. Later, the soul beast itself was frightened by the radiation and fell. The deer's feet slipped on the stones and landed on its head. The deer's antlers came into close contact with the gravel under the stones, and the brain was smashed all over its face. Tisk-tisk, it was as exciting as speeding and slipping. In the blink of an eye, a black shadow appeared near the corpse of the soul beast, and pounced heavily on the dead soul beast. Then, it realized that its prey was dead. Before Uchiha Uranium could come to its senses and see what kind of soul beast it was, this soul beast with 4 legs on the ground, similar to a wild wolf or a leopard, immediately flew up. Not literally flying, but the carnivorous soul beast that stepped on the corpse was so scared that it arched its back and jumped high on the spot. Then it used all 4 legs to escape, and it escaped from Uchiha Uranium's field of vision at a faster speed than before. The twists and turns made him stunned. However, this incident also proved that he was indeed a being that soul beasts were afraid of. When ordinary soul beasts saw him, they would not even think of taking away their prey, for fear that they would not run fast enough and hate their parents for not giving them more legs. This scene left a deep impression on him. In his memory, only the trickery demon pig played by the C9 jungler in the League of Legends could be compared with it. The soul beast in front of him gave him a more direct experience. It appeared with a whoosh, then it first stood up in fear, and then it ran away with another whoosh. After leaning against a tree and laughing for a long time, Uchiha Uranium gradually stopped. His expression gradually became serious. Objectively analyzing, if it wasn't for the terrifying aura of nuclear radiation just now, or if the concentration of the radiation source on his body wasn't high enough, which made the soul beast feel the threat of death, if these factors were removed, if he had fought the soul beast head-on, how would he have died? Too fast. His radiation eyes had just started to move, and everything was over. If it was a sneak attack, it would have left him with no power to resist, not to mention that when the herbivorous soul beast rushed over, he actually stood there waiting to die. This behavior really made him want to slap himself twice. He had no actual combat experience, no development of his own martial spirit, no thinking to judge the situation, nothing, just like a waste. Thinking of this, and thinking about it, if there was no threat of nuclear radiation from himself, would he die in the forest the first hour after entering it? Uchiha Uranium looked at the unfamiliar environment around him and suddenly felt uneasy. After judging that his nuclear radiation would disperse the soul beasts, was he too self-righteous? That's right, if he really lived peacefully in the forest, it would be like raising a waste, not to mention that the soul beasts would not actively attack him. What if a soul beast appeared one day and wanted to kill him even if it was threatened by radiation? Would he have no ability to resist at all? Damn it! He cursed himself inwardly, calling himself stupid and self-righteous, but fortunately, there was no big problem this time. He didn't have medicine on him. Once he was poisoned or infected with tetanus, he might not live long. Although he didn't know whether his soul master's physique could withstand it, he still didn't test it with his own life. Since he was reborn, he might as well be a little bit more survivable. Wouldn't it be better to pass the level with 1 life? Forget it. Any creature around me will be infected with radiation. I'll just treat this soul beast as something I picked up on the road. If it's eaten by other soul beasts, it probably won't live long after eating it. Pick up this soul beast and let it dry. It can be eaten for more than half a month. Tisk, I'm really lucky. Uchiha Uranium smiled, rolled up his clothes, and tidied up the hem of his trousers. Then he adjusted the angle to prevent the soul beast's brain from splashing on him. Finally, he carroted and walked in the direction he came from. Today's action ends here. There's a soul beast that looks like a deer. It is estimated that I don't need to go out to find food for a long time. It is enough to eat. I will build a shelter when I go back. On the way, Uchiha Uranium could feel the prying eyes around him, but they disappeared quickly. It was probably because of the smell of blood, and then they immediately ran away under the stimulation of radiation. Passing by the soul beast skeleton he had passed before, he thought for a moment, stopped, put the deer carcass aside, pulled out 3 pale ribs that were in good condition and not damaged from the ground, inserted them in the lower back, tied them with a thin rope that came with his robe, and then carried them up, walking step by step on the way home. It was getting close to dusk. The last rays of sunlight shone into this hastily cleaned camp. All the plants had decayed and collapsed on the ground in despair. Whether it was the dead tree before or the branches and leaves that broke at the touch, they had a sense of lifelessness in the light of dusk. The speed of nuclear radiation was far beyond that of ordinary radiation areas. This might be due to people. You should know that even in the radiation areas of modern Earth, there are animals living. Although it took hundreds of years for animals to gradually return, animals are not very sensitive to nuclear radiation. The latest novels are published on the 6th-9th book bar. In the few radiation zones on modern Earth, animals in the radiation zones did not flee directly after the radiation occurred. Instead, they left the zone collectively due to panic after a period of time due to the large-scale deaths caused by the radiation. So the question is, how high is the radiation intensity on him? It can actually directly disperse the soul beasts. This is difficult to measure, but it is obvious that at least his life will not be disturbed by endless soul beasts, and that's all. If he takes the initiative to cause trouble, then the soul beasts are likely to attack him under the current pressure. After all, the invisible threat of nuclear radiation cannot be seen in a few minutes. The dispersal effect is a warning from instinct and blood. It will invisibly raise the threat level to the highest level, so the soul beasts will flee one after another. It is a warning to flee, even if they accidentally enter the territory of other soul beasts and start a fight. Compared with the pressure of high-level soul beasts, Uchiha Uranium is no less. Night is coming. At this time, some dull footsteps gradually came from the forest. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8: The Corpse and the Tree Hole. At noon, the sun was blazing. There were slapping sounds coming from the lake in the forest, with an inexplicable smell. For a moment, the dead and deserted soul beast forest also came alive. A silver-haired boy took off his shirt and was bare-chested at the lake downstream to deal with the soul beast corpse. He brought a flat stone about 50 centimeters long and 50 centimeters from somewhere and placed it on the shore. On it was a peeled and washed deerskin. On the other side was a piece of driftwood that was 2 people long and 1 person wide. It was cut in half, and several vines passed through one of the holes to fix the driftwood to the shore. There were many stones piled underneath to ensure that it would not float around with the water flow. Many pieces of cut meat were placed on it. A whole morning passed, but he simply separated the skin and flesh, and did not even pick out the meat tendons and bone meat. It can only be said that he had never done such a thing before, and he was very novice and clumsy. Meat in this weather cannot be kept for a long time. At the latest, one day, these fresh pieces of meat will start to stink and rot if they are not pickled. This is unbearable for Uchiha Uranium, who is short of food. God knows where he will meet fresh living things next time, or he may never meet them again. After all, the radiation he carries will drive away all creatures, unless they bump into him without choosing a path like yesterday. This also means that he cannot capture prey through normal means. Oh, this thing makes my waist so sore. Standing up, Uchiha Uranium moved his waist and shoulder blades. The waves of sour stimulation made him roll his eyes directly. He bent over and squatted for more than an hour. He stood up in an instant and almost arranged everything clearly. After washing the meat, he started the next step, which was to apply salt, light a fire, smoke, and then hang it to let it dry, so that it could be considered complete. Salt was easy to solve. He brought a lot when he came out. The only problem was the fire. Would it attract some soul beasts to attack or something like that? Although his camp was already in a heavily irradiated area, and soul beasts generally wouldn't venture in, it was safer not to start a fire, but he couldn't smoke meat without fire, which made him very embarrassed. Forget it, just start a fire. The longer I hesitate, the faster the meat will stink. No matter if there are soul beasts or not, I don't believe they dare to get close. He only thought about this question for a while before deciding. He looked at the hot sky and thought that he should be able to go to the forest again in the afternoon. Although there were no treasures or trophies in the forest, it was not a good idea to sit in the camp. He didn't have a hammer or an axe. The dry wood he had prepared before peeled the bark, but couldn't knock the foundation, so he could only leave it there. Soon, Uchiha Uranium brought out several thin vines as thick as a little finger from the rainforest. After peeling and washing them, he put them on the meat. Then he used the machete to cut some branches as thick as forearms, and propped up something like a barbecue pole in the middle of the camp. Finally, he started a fire below and tied the vines with meat on it. There was a lot of firewood to ensure that the fire would not go out during his trip to the forest. However, since there was a lot of meat, he quickly built 3 more barbecue poles for smoking meat. After setting up 2 soul skill traps temporarily, he headed east with a package. There are actually many paths to take in the forest. Today, we will take another one. The sky is blue, and the branches above are crisscrossed. As he continued to move forward, Uchiha Uranium felt that the temperature in the forest had dropped a little. He looked up and found that the sunlight had been blocked by the dense leaves at some point, and it was no longer as hot as before. The wind blew. The trees made a rustling sound, and he felt as if he smelled something strange, a sour and fishy smell, just like 2 pounds of pork exposed to the sun in the summer, emitting waves of stench. It was just that the source of the smell was a little far away, and when it drifted to Uchiha Uranium with the wind, it was no longer so strong, but it also attracted his attention. If he guessed correctly, it should be the smell of rotting meat. If it was meat, he would be interested. Regardless of whether it was rotten or not, at least the fur, bones, teeth and the like were good things. He just happened to be short of a lot of materials. If there were sharp teeth, they would be a good choice for making daggers in the future. He was interested and quickly followed the smell. Because he was not walking normally, but following the smell, he would inevitably take detours and bump into things. However, he was also prepared. He left marks around him intentionally or unintentionally along the way. Sometimes he would cut a knife on a tree, or put stones in a pattern. He didn't have a dog's nose, so it was impossible for him to smell where it was directly. So to find the location, he had to smell it left and right. He would lean towards the side with a heavier smell. Although this method was extremely unreliable, it was a way anyway. He didn't have anything else to do, so he wasted some time. On the way, he also set up a ground spike trap. His soul power recovered quickly. Although it was not at full state, it was still okay to set up 2 traps. However, he only set up 1. After all, he had to keep some soul power for backup. It was not so pleasant to drain the soul power. Soul power can be restored naturally, which is equivalent to a skill with CD properties. Uchiha Uranium understands it this way. When the CD is full, just put 1 in, just like tame planting mushrooms. About an hour later, the breeze blew, bringing the fresh smell of grass and trees, accompanied by a strong stench of corpses. This hot weather is not the right time to store fresh blood and flesh. Once the shelf life is over, the smell of fresh meat and blood will be quickly transformed by microorganisms into pungent stench. If it is not stopped, scavenging soul beasts will soon come and have a feast. It is strange that this smell lingers for a long time, as if no soul beast cares about it. In Uchiha Uranium's feeling, he may be approaching. Out of caution, he quickly set up a ground spike trap around him. Although he is a little timid, he still ensures safety first. What if he encounters someone, and others see him, a 6-year-old child, and directly want to kill him, then he will die miserably here on the spot. After all, people are not soul beasts, and they will be scared away by his heavy nuclear radiation. The latest novels are published on the 69th book forum. Soon, he found it. He saw the place where the smell was the strongest. There were open trees all around. In front of him was the remains of an old tree with a big hole in the middle. It didn't look deep, but a strong stench was fermenting and emitting continuously inside. The smell he smelled came from inside. Is this the place? Uchiha Uranium didn't approach rashly. He first lit a ball of fire, wrapped it with leaves, and threw it into the tree hole from a distance. From the firelight, he saw that there was a human corpse in the tree hole with a tragic death. Roar, it turns out to be a human. It seems that he hasn't been dead for a long time. The flesh hasn't rotted yet. Before he could act, Uchiha Uranium felt that the sky was a little darker. A huge shadow blocked the sunlight. The huge shadow was projected under his feet, completely covering Uchiha Uranium's shadow. A giant creature stood behind him. Damn it! Chapter 9, Chasing Across Life and Death. Without hesitation, after feeling something was wrong, the fan-shaped jade in Uchiha Uranium's eyes spun wildly. He raised his arm and held it beside his ear at his fastest speed, then rolled to the left. The stone stuck in his waist and hit his spine on his back, made him feel numb, but he couldn't care so much in a critical moment. Even if there was a sharp stone next to him, he had to roll over. But he was still a beat late. A terrifying force passed by his side, as if time had slowed down. Uchiha Uranium turned his head, and he could clearly see the hair on the surface of the huge bear arm fluttering in the wind. This huge force was transmitted down along the bear's paw, and then it hit the ground like an earthquake, shaking up the rubble and hitting Uchiha Uranium next to him. In less than a second, there was no danger. The zinged-out great forest, which was like a picnic, and the human-shaped disaster Uchiha Uranium reversed their offense and defense. The terrifying attack came in an instant, and he didn't even figure out what happened. After rolling twice, Uchiha Uranium turned over with his right hand, half squatting on the ground. He did not look back, nor did he think to investigate. He only saw the arm of a soul beast, but that was enough. He already knew what was happening. A soul beast was targeting him. Sure enough, after seeing that he did not kill the little bug, the exploding owlbear turned around and fixed his eyes on Uchiha Uranium. There was no roar or other sound. Without any warning, it pounced directly on Uchiha Uranium, with a pair of bear claws flashing cold light, and swung at him fiercely. Bang! With a muffled sound, the hard rock was immediately blasted, and the fragments of stone flew everywhere, flying around with a sharp wind sound. Uchiha Uranium was not slapped, and after he half squatted, he found the next stone shelter, and then after the soul beast pounced on the rock, he continued to run forward. He couldn't stop. A soul beast of this extreme strength would hurt him if he touched it, and would kill him if he touched it. He could only hope that it wasn't fast enough so that he could get rid of it safely. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome. While thinking, Uchiha Uranium jumped from a flat rock to farther rock. He used his feet to climb up with both hands, grabbed a convex object and climbed up. After turning over, he continued to rush forward. The sound of the stone exploding just now had already reminded him, and the dull earthquake-like footsteps that followed made his face change. It was chasing him. After understanding this, Uchiha Uranium began to slow down and observe the surroundings. In the forest, he couldn't outrun the soul beast. He had to find a way to gain an advantage from the terrain, preferably a rainforest environment, relying on vines and mud to get rid of it. But unfortunately, this is an orthodox forest landform with stable terrain and pleasant environment. The soul beast behind him did not give him time to find it. With the advantage of its large size and long strides, Uchiha Uranium soon heard the footsteps from behind. He could not help but feel nervous. He knew that if he did not make some moves at this moment, he would definitely not be able to outrun the soul beast and would be torn to pieces soon. It seems that I have to use my soul power to shake it off in one breath. The boy did not hesitate. After realizing that it was impossible to shake off the soul beast behind him with his normal speed, he immediately used his soul power. A faint white light appeared on the surface of his skin. Then, the black fan-shaped jade began to slowly rotate in his pupils. A clear yellow soul ring rose from his feet and circled around his body. The next moment, the boy quickly broke away from the exploding owlbear at a speed far exceeding the original speed. However, in contrast, his originally limited soul power began to be rapidly consumed. You must know that he set a total of 4 traps in a day. Counting the natural recovery, his current soul power can only support him to move forward quickly for less than a minute. Roar! Suddenly, a thunderous scream rang in Uchiha Uranium's ears. The boy who was jumping in the air suddenly paused, and fell heavily to the ground before he regained consciousness. Then a mouthful of blood spurted out, and his eyes were black. The scream caused him an unimaginable heavy blow under his high tension, like a drum beating on his heart. The continuous tinnitus and black spots in front of his eyes raged wildly in his senses until he fell to the ground, and his ears kept buzzing. Puff. Another mouthful of blood was spit on the ground. At this time, he also woke up a little. In the blur, he saw the soul beast rushing towards him not far away. His eyes widened suddenly. His brain wanted to make his body move, but his whole body was weak. The roar just now was not just as simple as a loud voice. It was mixed with the soul power and murderous intent of the exploding owlbear. It seemed that seeing the exploding owlbear getting closer and closer, Uchiha Uranium suddenly felt a strong threat of death. It was coming. After a short roar, he felt his body feel something. Move. Move. He was getting more and more anxious. His body, which had just been hit hard by the scream, was slowly recovering, but it was too late. The exploding owlbear was right in front of him. Roar. The exploding owlbear, which was more than 5 meters tall, waved its claws with unparalleled momentum. In the horrified eyes of Uchiha Uranium, it suddenly slapped the boy who was close at hand. Bang! The gravel burst and the dust flew high. The next moment, a thin figure rushed out from it. It was Uchiha Uranium. The experience just now was too horrifying. Even he was wondering if he would die here if he was 1 second faster. Fortunately, he rolled over at the last moment to avoid the critical position. Unfortunately, his arm was still blown by the sharp wind. His clothes burst immediately and several blood marks were left on his arm. Without stopping, he began to burn his soul power to provide speed. His speed was getting faster and faster. He turned over the boulders and stepped over the tree roots. The wind whistled in his ears. He seemed to have broken through the speed limit of his body. Because of the intense exercise, the pain surged, but it stimulated him to run faster. The latest novel is published on 69 Shoe Bar. He had just walked through the gates of hell, and the horror between life and death was as terrifying as if his heart was held in his hand. He had never been so close to death, and he didn't want to be close to death again. Yes, he was very scared now. Very scared. Roar. The exploding owlbear used the same trick again and roared out the thunderous roar again, but this time it failed, and Uchiha Uranium had already run out of the range of its roar. The exploding owlbear's tiny eyes were full of madness. Looking at the empty surroundings, it roared, then leaned down and licked all the blood spit out by Uchiha Uranium around it, and then made a sniffing motion. The next moment, it turned around and immediately chased in the direction where the boy ran away. It didn't notice that after Uchiha Uranium spat out blood, the surrounding trees began to decay at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the soil gradually turned black, with a disgusting smell. As the blood began to spread, heavy radiation began to spread around the blood. Not long after, the towering tree closest to the blood position died completely, and the bark began to flow like blood, the roots began to rot, the leaves began to turn yellow and gray, and then withered and fell to the ground, starting to turn black little by little from the end. This pollution speed was far faster than the trees in the previous camp. Chapter 10 The behemoth died with an explosive explosion. Uchiha opened his mouth and tried his best to breathe, even though his chest was already aching. He was sweating all over. As a soul master, his body was bursting with amazing speed. Although he had already overdrawn his soul power and his head would still feel a stinging pain from time to time, he did not dare to stop. Hurry up, faster. We will soon reach the first trap location. Uchiha's mind was full of thoughts of persistence. This was a dense forest. The scorching sun penetrated the gaps between the layers of leaves in the forest and shone down. A thin figure was running fast, looking behind and around from time to time, fearing that some terrifying creatures would suddenly appear. Although his facial features were delicate, he looked gray and covered with dust and blood at this moment. His silver-white hair was wet with sweat and grew on his head like messy weeds. The boy was wearing blue and white trousers and a long shirt, but he looked extremely embarrassed at the moment. The clothes on his arms were torn to pieces, and his hands were covered with blood. There was a horrifying wound on his arm, and as he continued to run, the blood dripped onto the road bit by bit. He had no time to bandage it, and now his whole body was bleeding. It was hard to imagine how he could hold on. Excessive blood loss alone would kill him. The pain from the wounds was also tormenting the thin boy. Roar. Suddenly, a brutal roar came from a distance. The boy trembled all over, then gritted his teeth and ran forward at a faster speed. The sense of crisis and urgency was like the giant claws of a monster, grabbing his heart fiercely. At the place where the giant beast was, the blasting owlbear, which was originally extremely terrifying, was a little frightening at the moment. Although its physical fitness was very strong, this strong body did not bring it any advantage. After the roar just now, it suddenly felt an extremely itchy feeling in the depths of its throat, followed by crazy vomiting. All the food in its stomach, half a leg, half a head, limb fragments, etc. were vomited on the ground. But it was not over yet. It then began to vomit blood. A stream of black blood gushed out from the depths of its throat, as if it was endless, and all of it was vomited on the ground, with a strong stench and corruption. Just smelling it would make people feel dizzy. Not only did it vomit blood, but after the giant bear had nothing to vomit, it barely crouched down and continued to chase the boy as if nothing had happened. Its fur caused waves of itching and pain, and before it knew it, large patches of hair had been left on the ground. It was shedding its fur. The chase continued. Uchiha Uranium could feel the feeling of being stared at from behind, and he also believed that the soul beast would never let him go unless he died. During this 1-hour escape, he was unfortunate enough to have a brief contact with it again, and the price he paid was that his arm was lightly rubbed, and his skin and flesh were immediately torn apart, and blood flew everywhere. Fortunately, he was small in size, and after flexibly drilling through the hole under the stone, and the boulder briefly blocked it, he got the amulet of safe distance. He really couldn't figure it out. He was already full of nuclear radiation. Other soul beasts saw him as if they saw a ghost and ran faster than rabbits. How could such a thing appear and not let go of him? But he didn't know when the bear began to catch up with him, or something else happened to distract it. Anyway, no matter what the situation was, he would never stop before returning to the camp full of traps. If the scene of approaching silently before happened again, he would not have a second chance to roll over. He was tired and in pain now. There was no part of his body that didn't hurt. His mind was a little muddled. The price of overdrawn soul power began to appear unconsciously. He felt that he would fall at any time, and then he would not have the strength to get up. Uchiha Uranium was panting. His thin body could no longer generate any motivation to take a step. At this moment, he had reached his limit. Behind him, it was quiet. There was no footsteps and roars. This meant that he had left the bear behind for a distance, and it was very likely that the bear was no longer chasing him. But Uchiha Uranium knew that this was impossible. The bear's eyes were full of madness. It would never give up just because it couldn't catch up. It must be on the way. He was willing but not strong enough now. He couldn't run in big strides. He could only hold on to stones and trees step by step and move forward with difficulty. The slow walk was also to accumulate physical strength and prepare for the next sprint escape. The sound of the stream gradually became clearer. After a while, a stream appeared in front of the boy. If I guessed correctly, it should be a branch of the forest lake. Without saying a word, he immediately bent down and drank a big mouthful of the clear stream water. Then he quickly washed his body, which was the time to wipe his face and hands. Then he crossed the stream without hesitation and continued to move forward. Can't stay too long. This was Uchiha Uranium's inner warning. He knew very well that he was not out of danger. Only when the soul beast died could the crisis be resolved. And he must kill the soul beast today, otherwise the soul beast would attack again when he was sleeping at night. It was chilling to think about it. He didn't understand what went wrong to attract the attention of this soul beast. The human corpse that had died not long ago was in the tree hole. He had just arrived nearby and lit a fire to lure the soul beast into the tree hole to investigate the situation. The soul beast was already behind him. It came too suddenly and too quickly. The exploding owlbear's movements became slower and slower. Compared with the fierce slapping and strong physique an hour ago, it seemed to have aged decades after an hour. A lot of hair fell off, and the remaining body hair also looked sick. The whole bear's body was 2 times smaller than before, as if there was something in its body that was rapidly eating its fat and energy. But its eyes were still crazy. Even though its internal organs were bleeding and its blood vessels were ruptured, it still did not make any painful roars. It was still chasing silently as before. The latest novels are published on the 6th-9th book bar. A quarter of an hour later, Uchiha Uranium recovered his strength and prepared to start running fast, but a smell of corruption and mold suddenly came from behind, and swept towards the boy who had not yet moved with an unparalleled strong wind. In a hurry, Uchiha Uranium could only curl up as much as possible, holding up the machete in his hand, and using the side to protect his face and chest. Bang! With a muffled sound, the boy ran twice as fast as before and was smashed away by the bear's claws. He was slapped and flew more than 10 meters away, and the side of the machete was directly sunken, almost chopping off his head. After landing, he rolled 7 or 8 times in the forest with fallen leaves and stones, until he hit a boulder and stopped rolling. Ugh! The internal organs were bleeding directly from the impact, and the boulder just now made him see stars. Unable to hold it back, Uchiha Uranium screamed and spit out a large mouthful of blood. The severe pain spread all over his body, and the boy's face was pale. After struggling on the ground for a while without success, his head became more and more foggy, his eyes went dark, his body could no longer feel anything, and finally his head fell heavily and he fainted. And the exploding owlbear, after the successful sneak attack, did not make any roar, but walked towards the boy silently. Suddenly, its body began to tremble, and black blood flowed out of the corners of its eyes, ears, and mouth uncontrollably. Then it fell to the ground in pain and began to vomit violently. Its internal organs began to bleed profusely, its organ functions began to fail, and its DNA gene chain began to collapse due to the intake of a large amount of nuclear radiation. After a while, the giant beast fell not far from the boy, dirty blood continued to seep out, and died in the pain of physical collapse. From beginning to end, the boy did not use weapons to hurt the giant beast, not even once. Chapter 11, Waking Up. Darkness. A deep darkness. In this darkness, the boy's mind was gradually awakening. Where is this? The boy's mind became clearer and clearer, and he began to explore the surroundings. The boundless darkness enveloped him, silent and quiet, so quiet that it made people palpitate. Am I dead? Where is this place? Is there anyone? After waiting for a moment, Uchiha Uranium continued to ask the empty darkness after no response from the surroundings. Silence, a long silence. He began to recall the last encounter, the sudden attack, the terrifying force, and the exploding owlbear that slowly walked towards him. Am I dead? There was no answer around. With a light sigh, Uchiha Uranium relaxed a little, and his vigilance and fear of the surroundings slowly let go. Since he was already dead, there was nothing to be afraid of. It turns out that I am already dead. After talking to himself, Uchiha Uranium glanced around and fell into silence. Without looking, he already knew that he might have been torn and chewed into pieces by the soul beast. He knew that everyone would die eventually, but he didn't expect it to come so soon. Yesterday, he was still lamenting that he should face the soul beast forest squarely, and that he was not proficient in the use of soul power. Even with the amulet of nuclear radiation, he should lie well. Today, he was attacked by a soul beast and became food. Uchiha Uranium knew very well that he was definitely escorted during the half-month journey from leaving the family to the Xingdao Great Forest. He could feel that the surroundings were very safe, or that no one would bother him as a teenager. But he also knew that once he really walked into the forest, the escort would disappear in an instant. These people who were responsible for protection on the surface were actually more like prison guards who were responsible for monitoring and observing to ensure that the prisoners could walk safely to the prison. There would be no one to guard him and let him live safely. But since he chose to take this path, he had to bite the bullet and go on even if he might die in the front. He didn't regret it. Before he left, he said to himself that he wanted to see his younger brother born, and that he should not put his hopes on him. With his physique, he should give up as soon as possible and give birth to another younger brother. He said things like that to make his parents give up on him. Until now, he still had a lot of things that he had not figured out, such as why he was attacked, why there were corpses with tragic appearances in the tree hole, why this soul beast seemed to ignore the nuclear radiation warning from its blood, and why it could attack him silently. There were too many whys and too many questions that he wanted to know the truth. If he had not set up a few traps when he went out at full status, then he could increase his speed by consuming soul power for a long time, and maybe the ending would be different. If he had not stopped to rest, but continued to run, then the ending might be different. Self-blame and reflection lingered in his mind. Whether it was underestimating the forest and exploring without soul power, or wanting to join in the fun when encountering special situations, causing himself to leave the nearby activity area, etc. If these factors would cause him to fall in the future, then it would be acceptable. But these factors together made him die in the soul beast forest where he had not been for a few days. Just thinking about this, Uchiha Uranium wanted to slap himself a few times. How could a person be so stupid? There was another short silence. After staying in this dark and vast space for an unknown amount of time, he began to feel a little anxious. It seemed that something was peeping at him in the darkness, which made him feel an extremely panicked sense of urgency. He knew that it was all an illusion. After staying in a dark environment for too long, people can easily develop such emotions. Even how long they stayed there was unknown. How long will I stay here? When can I leave? Am I dead? The boy gradually became impatient. Naturally, he began to want to break free and leave here. If this dead and deserted darkness is really the world after death, he will go crazy. No, death should be the end of consciousness. If he can still feel anxious about the surroundings now, does that mean am I still alive? Hey, am I still alive? Is there anyone? As if in response to the boy's confusion, as soon as he finished speaking, a little light began to appear in the darkness. The light was a blazing white light, very weak. Even such a weak and inconspicuous light, in this environment where there is nothing but nothingness and darkness, still attracted the boy's full attention. After the first beam of light appeared, some changes gradually occurred in the surroundings, as if it was distorted, just like the black and white photos in an old camera, from black to gray, and with the color change, the darkness was no longer dark, and more light shone in and sprinkled on him. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The darkness fades here. The dazzling light shone directly on Uchiha Uranium, who had just opened his eyes. Tears flowed down because of the stimulation, and he couldn't help but use his hands to block the sunlight. The pale arm came into view, the white skin was now covered with dust, the forearm was covered with dark red coagulated blood, the fingers were cracked everywhere, especially the base of the thumb, which was stained with blood, and the whole hand exuded a terrifying and weird feeling. Hiss. As his body moved, the feeling of skin and flesh tearing instantly spread all over his body. The sudden severe pain made him tremble all over. Now he only had one feeling. Pain. The endless pain was like waves, constantly coming. Uchiha Uranium felt like he was a small sampan, which could be broken by the strong wind and huge waves at any time. In addition to the pain, there was also unbearable nausea and vomiting caused by the overdrawn soul power. His head was like being in a bell and kept roaring. Whether it was the body, arms or internal organs, they were all in pain. In particular, the pain of nerve tearing in various parts of the body made him tremble all over. This made him stop the idea of moving his body and keep lying on the ground, like a mud, in the hope of getting familiar with the pain. Half an hour later, enduring the pain, Uchiha Uranium stood up with difficulty, half leaning against a boulder behind him, panting slightly. The slightly bigger movement just now almost made him faint, which also gave him an intuitive understanding of his current situation. He could die if he gasped for air. What on earth had happened? He actually survived. This was simply unbelievable. With that crazy beating last time, he should have died. Did the bear let him go in the end? Impossible. With doubts in his mind, Uchiha Uranium began to slowly turn his neck, observing the surroundings, trying to find some reason. It was just that the surroundings made people feel a little uncomfortable. Even though the boy had experienced life and death crises and was mentally prepared for anything, his stomach began to churn at this moment, and he felt like vomiting. Black dirty blood flowed everywhere, carrying a strong stench and corruption. All the surrounding plants turned gray and rotten, losing all vitality. The ground with streaked fallen leaves also became like filth in a swamp in his eyes, emitting an uncomfortable and disgusting feeling. The source of the dirty blood was a huge body lying on the ground, which had been dead for a long time. Chapter 12 Rest. What happened? Uchiha Uranium was silent for a while. He looked at the changes in the surrounding environment, and then saw the giant bear that died tragically. Suddenly, he understood something. Although he didn't know that the bear had liked his blood and had not been effectively treated, resulting in the destruction of the gene chain in his body, but judging from the current situation, it was dead. And he was alive. He closed his eyes and began to circulate his soul power slightly, but then he was twitching in pain. He had already mastered the cultivation of soul power. He had previously overdrawn his soul power to increase his speed, and now he finally ushered in the bad consequences. When the soul power moved, his whole body hurt, and forcing the soul power to cultivate was like a knife cutting, which made him sweat and see no effect. However, after this opportunity to cross the life and death, he felt that his soul power bottleneck had been broken. According to the previous level, it should have reached level 12 now. How to say it? This is a complete surprise. After all, he never thought that he could still survive. But this is indeed worth getting excited about. However, Just when he pulled up the corner of his mouth to smile, his wound was torn because of the muscle pulling. The pain in it were naturally not experienced by others. I've lost a lot by taking risks this time. Alice, there was no way. He could see that whenever he moved, his body would immediately start bleeding, and it couldn't be stopped. But he was hungry and thirsty now, and he didn't know how many days he had been unconscious. If he didn't eat, he might not see the sun tomorrow. There was no way. Uchiha Uranium struggled to take out the water and food in the soul guide. After enduring the severe pain in his body and eating something, he took out a small box. There were some urgent medical supplies in it. Then he took off his clothes and began to clean the wound with clean water, disinfect, bandage, etc. A quarter of an hour later. After doing all this, Uchiha Uranium took out a snow silkworm blanket as thin as paper, roughly spread it on the ground, and then laid down again and fainted. Just now, for the treatment, the nerves were constantly tingling, which made him a little nervous. Not to mention the huge pressure before, the threat of death, the drying up of the soul power meridians, and the surprise of increasing the soul power level. Now he can finally rest well. In his dream, he felt as if he had returned to his clan. He had lost a radioactive infection brought by nuclear radiation and became an ordinary soul master. His parents were still alive and had a younger brother, a little thing the size of a dumpling. He held his newborn brother and looked at the little kid in front of him, and a heroic feeling arose in his heart. From now on, you are my Huo Dao Dao, understand? The next moment, the scene changed to a hall again. He and a woman were accompanied by each other. At a grand wedding, they became husband and wife. It was a pity that no matter how wide he opened his eyes, he could not see the blurry face under the wedding dress. The scene changed again, and he had become an old man with many children and grandchildren, all of whom were famous and well-known figures in the whole continent. After he finished his last words of advice, he took his last breath. It seemed that this was the life of the soul master Uchiha Uranium. From the wedding scene, he could feel that he had changed from the first perspective to the third perspective, looking down at the life of Uchiha Uranium in old age. This novel feeling made him a little excited, but also accompanied by uneasiness. If he had not awakened the radiation eye, perhaps this would be his life, and the scenes from birth to death were all unfolding in front of him. Suddenly, the picture froze. Then in the eyes of the boy, the picture began to flow backwards, from that sentence, to Uchiha Uranium in the picture sitting upright on a chair, and finally, looking up at the sky. The boy looked at Uchiha Uranium's actions, and somehow a subtle emotion arose in his heart. He didn't know whether he was entangled with Uchiha Uranium's life or lamenting his own arrival. This kind of picture, like playing a movie, made him feel more and more wrong as time passed. Time stopped flowing backwards, and it continued to move forward as before. The scene returned to the scene where Uchiha Uranium was giving his last instructions, but he did not die. Instead, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the boy's position. His black eyes were filled with an incomparable brilliance, but the other people in the scene did not react at all. The two looked at each other across the dream. The boy could see himself in the eyes of the old man in front of him. He thought the other person should be the same, but it was a bit creepy to see the two Uchiha Uraniums looking at each other. After a long time, Uchiha Uranium looked away and put his eyes back on his children and grandchildren. A slightly hoarse voice came out, as if he was talking to all his descendants. You can take a different path, right? After that, he closed his eyes, swallowed the last breath of life, and his old body collapsed, slumped in the chair, and completely left the world. Not long after, bursts of crying came from the lobby, and the life of Uchiha Uranium was completely over. The young man stood outside the morning hall, looking at the photos inside, and touched his face unconsciously. He understood a little bit what had just happened. He had traveled through time, and it was reasonable that there should be two souls fighting for one body. But he felt that he was born directly, and the baby should not be aware of his death, but the strange but silent scene at the moment showed him that everything was possible in Douluo Continent. So he was a little silent. If he guessed correctly, the old man just now was the real Uchiha Uranium, and his life was the life he should have lived. It was just his arrival that changed everything, so he said that he could take a different path. Is that so? With a sigh, Uchiha Uranium closed his eyes, and the bizarre memory ended. What followed was a real dream. In the dream, he was omnipotent, stepping on a 100,000-year soul beast, punching the gods of the god realm, and all the Shrek of the spirit hall had to crawl. He had the largest harem and dreamed the most unrealistic dream. The latest novel is first published on 69 Shushu Bar. The dream is over, but the hard life has to go on. Suddenly he thought of this phrase in his dream, and then he woke up by himself. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse, and there was a dead silence all around. Uchiha Uranium turned his head and looked around, but found that there was nothing worth noting, and he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. However, because he woke up suddenly, he found that the meridians in his body had almost been repaired at this moment. Sure enough, the self-repairability of the Soul Master is strong. After only one day, the overdrawn meridians have been restored. Perhaps this is also due to the fact that he often takes meridian cleansing pills. Before awakening his soul power, he had been taking meridian cleansing pills. Although it could not improve his soul power, it could significantly improve his cultivation speed. However, he never ate it again after he awakened his soul power. According to his father, he was afraid that his soul power foundation would not be solid after eating it. Moreover, even if the pills that improve the soul power level allowed him to level up several levels, he would need to spend a lot of time to consolidate his soul power, not to mention that if he took too many pills, the accumulated toxicity would be quite high. His father would definitely prepare pills for him to improve his soul power in the future, but they were not for him to eat now. Forget it, nothing to do, and I can't sleep, so I'll practice soul power. Uchiha Uranium smiled, closed his eyes and began to practice soul power. Is there anyone who wants to invest? If no one, I'll ask again later. 0.0. Chapter 13 Recovery. Time passed quickly. After resting for 2 days, the small wounds on his body had slowly recovered and scabbed, but the big wounds, such as the long cut on his arm, would probably take a long time to heal if no one sewed 2 stitches for him. It was the wound on his arm that made him not leave the place easily. After all, there was still some food stored, enough for him to live for another 5 or 6 days. And when he really couldn't live anymore, wouldn't there be meat that hadn't been eaten in the camp? I don't know if it was because he broke through the threshold of life and death, or because of the dream, but somehow, Uchiha Uranium felt that the speed of his soul power increased faster. If it was 10 before, then now it is 12, or 13. Although it doesn't look like much change, it is actually much smoother than before. After staying for another 2 days, when most of the wounds showed signs of healing, Uchiha Uranium no longer waited, but stood up, forced himself to walk to the body of the exploding Alber, and after carefully looking through it without any results, he slowly walked towards the direction of the original camp. This bear had no benefit. Its fur had all fallen off, and it carried a rotten stench. Its claws and teeth were extremely gray and cracked with a slight force. It was probably due to radiation, otherwise it wouldn't be so brittle. As for the flesh and blood, let alone anything else, as soon as he peeled off the fur, the seemingly full body collapsed instantly. The strong smell of corruption inside almost suffocated him on the spot. The flesh and blood had all rotted away. It can only be said that once nuclear radiation erupts, it is really unimaginable. He had no idea about this and thought it was a bit strange that the soul beast was scared away, but now that he saw this strong soul beast in its current state, he was scared to death. Everyone knew to run away and it was best not to get involved in it. It was safe along the way. It seemed that the soul beast forest had once again returned to that peaceful life. There were no soul beasts making trouble, and no special circumstances occurred. Uchiha Uranium decided that he would never seek death again before his injury was fully recovered. The previous horrific experience had reminded him that if he did not prepare for death, he would really seek death. For example, if there was no need, he would definitely wait until later to go to the tree hole. It didn't matter even if he missed some news about the treasures of heaven and earth. He only had one life, so cherishing the present was more important than anything else. He only understood the preciousness of the word stability now. After returning to the camp, everything was a little embarrassing but the same as before. The fire had long been extinguished, and the meat hanging on it was neither smoked nor rotten, but in an extremely embarrassing situation. You say it tastes good, it has only been smoked for such a short time, and there was no fire, it was already a blessing to be able to eat it. You say it tastes bad, but it is cooked anyway, and you can still swallow it with a little bit of grit, and it also has taste. After all, it is smeared with salt. As for resmoking now, it is definitely too late. The meat has been fixed, and you can only adjust the taste slowly. Whether it tastes good or not is another matter, as long as it is edible. The boy was no longer picky. He soon prepared a barbecue rack and started grilling bacon. Although there was no such thing as the best barbecue that a time traveler must have, it was precious to have some. In the end, he finished eating and concluded that this thing was a bit hard on the teeth. Now looking back, the wooden house was not built, and he could only grill food. There was no bowl for drinking water, only his own skin bag. Everything was just starting, but he was covered in wounds. He didn't know what to say in this situation. Long live life? Forget it, let's do something simple first. The boy smiled bitterly and shook his head. He used chicken soup that life must go on and tomorrow will always be better to motivate himself, and then he focused on the foundation. Soon he gave up. He couldn't do physical work at the moment, so he got something else first, such as a fence. After a while, he was a little desperate. He had no knife, no axe, and no tools. His martial soul was the Sharingan, not a sword or a knife. He couldn't cut anything. He couldn't survive at all. Damn. What should I do? I can't make a house out of it with my own hands, right? In desperation, Uchiha Uranium gradually shifted his gaze to his hands. Looking at his arms that had just healed from an old injury, he fell into deep thought for a moment. There was really no other way, so he had to do it even if he only had his hands. Thinking of this, the boy raised his head, stood up, and walked towards the pile of whole logs in silence. 1 month later, a rough, simple wooden house stood next to the lake in the forest. The bottom was a semicircular pile of logs laid flat, with the flat side facing up and the round side facing down, embedded in the ground. There were also several vines fixed in it to prevent the foundation from detaching. From the foundation upwards was a touch of green, with hard wooden branches supporting the anchor points of the wall, supplemented by crisscrossing vines woven into green wall. It was like this all around. Since the logs were really difficult to solve, Uchiha Uranium finally thought of using vines to solve the wall problem. The effect was very successful. Although the vines in the rainforest were very damp at first, they no longer had that smell after being washed and dried. Although the toughness decreased, the texture was significantly improved. With the branches of suitable shapes as fixing points, a stable and breathable wall was completed. The hut was about 3 meters high, 3.5 meters including the foundation, and about 3 meters in depth. From the outside, it looked like a square block. Although it looked stupid and was actually stupid, the hardships experienced in it and the long time of weaving the wall bit by bit could not be described in a few words. The latest novel was first published on the 69th book bar. The vine walls were all around, but there were doors, windows, and skylights. Although the space in the house was not large, it was enough for him to live and sleep alone. The vines were ventilated, so he covered them with fur to prevent it from being too cold when sleeping. When the sun is abundant, he opens the skylight to let the light into the house so that it doesn't appear too dark inside. The problem of food is relatively large, but the gap can be improved. After discovering that the trap will not be contaminated with nuclear radiation before it is triggered, he came up with an idea to catch prey with traps. Although powerful soul beasts will not be killed by such traps, there are always weak soul beasts, and he can't eat the powerful ones. So he just lives by checking the traps every day to see if there are any prey dead around. It can be said that everything is slowly getting better, just like what he said a month ago. Life must go on, and tomorrow will always be better. Oh, today's update is over. Alice, when I think about adding more tomorrow, I am really happy and painful. Chapter 14 3 years. 3 years later. The Star Dou Great Forest is located in the south of the Sharingan Empire, spanning the two empires. Due to the large number of soul beasts here, this is also the place where the border between the two countries is the least clear. From the map, most of the Star Dou Great Forest is within the territory of the Douluo Empire. Of course, the Sharingan Empire has never admitted this. As one of the 3 major wild soul beasts, this is naturally the place where soul masters most want to come. Because every time they come here, it means that they are about to advance. No one can tell how many years the Star Dou Great Forest has existed in the Douluo Continent, but after entering the forest, the dense forest that covers the sky and the sun is enough to tell people how long it has existed. At the junction of the outer edge and the depths of the Star Dou Great Forest, next to the lake in the forest. Time flies. It has been 3 years since the life and death crisis. During this period, there has been no similar attack again. This may be because he rarely explores deeper, but more importantly, he is very cautious. If he chooses to go to a place, he must first slow down the trap on the path. That was about it. There was a trap every few steps. He would place 2 at most, and keep at least half of his soul power to ensure his safety. After placing more than 50 traps, he began to explore formally. When there was any movement, he would run towards the trap array, leaving absolutely no loopholes. It must be said that this method was very time-consuming and energy-consuming, but it was unexpectedly safe, which also allowed him to enjoy 3 years of peace. Perhaps because there were so many traps, there were more and more stupid people around who ran into the traps. With sufficient food, he also started what he should do, learning and practicing. There was nothing to do during the day, so he would flip through books. He brought enough books, and they were thick enough. Whether it was the Soul Beast Encyclopedia or other books, it was enough for him to slowly learn and absorb. At night, he practiced soul power. It can be said that his life was both fulfilling and boring. It was fulfilling because he had a lot of things to do. It was boring because many things were the same as yesterday. He did think about not being so tired. Practicing soul power was very mentally exhausting, and there was no need to read during the day. Wouldn't it be better to just sleep? But he remembered the scene when he was paralyzed beside the boulder, looking at the bear in despair as it walked towards him. Without strength, you can only be slaughtered. In nature, the fittest survive. If you don't make progress, you will be eliminated. If you fall behind, you will be beaten. One aphorism after another lingered in his mind. Since he had the idea of being lazy that day, he understood that his biggest enemy was his lazy heart. For some reason, he cultivated very quickly. In just 3 years, he improved his soul power from level 12 to level 20. According to the original book he had read, improving to level 20 soul power from the age of 10 to 12 was already a symbol of genius. He hadn't even turned 9 yet, so this terrifying improvement speed really frightened him. Because he wanted to accumulate more soul power, he cultivated for a while. Anyway, the soul power cultivated would not disappear, but would accumulate. After he obtained his own soul ring, his soul power would increase explosively, and he would even have level 22 soul power or even level 23 soul power as soon as he got the soul ring. The reason for making these preparations is that he is about to leave here, leave this lifeless lake, and go to the depths of the Xingdao Great Forest to see if there is any other place where he can survive. Yes, lifeless. Including his camp, the vine house that cost him countless efforts has been eroded and rotted. He has not slept in the house, mainly because the smell is too disgusting. The lake water began to stink because of the high concentration of radiation, making it undrinkable. As early as a year ago, he blocked all the branches that flowed to other places, and even dived underground to try to block the source hidden underground to prevent radiation from flowing back along the water flow and contaminating the source of groundwater. If the nuclear radiation continues to spread along the lake and along the branches, it is possible that all the soul beasts within a radius of 100 miles will die, and this not-so-small area will become a real death hell. He hadn't noticed this when he first came to the forest, but after living there for 2 years, he realized that he was not a world destroyer, he was just a poor passerby who hid in the forest because of the unavoidable radiation. He didn't need to let his former neighbors suffer such harm in this way. He was not qualified, and no one was qualified, to dominate this land. The most important reason was that because he lived at the main source, the water containing radiation flowed everywhere. Unknowingly, many soul beasts had died because they had been drinking this water. The first to die were soul beasts with low soul power levels. And these soul beasts with low soul power levels happened to be his main source of food. In other words, because of his own reasons, his food source was gradually decreasing. Maybe one day, he really had nothing to eat. This speed was very fast. At the latest in half a year, all soul beasts would escape from this hell by themselves. And even if there were soul beasts still alive in this hell, they were soul beasts that had been mutated by radiation. For them, Uchiha Uranium, which was itself a source of radiation, could even be regarded as the best supplement. And if they still didn't die after experiencing radiation and continued to mutate, then you can imagine how horrible it was. Kill yourself, huh? You are really amazing, Uchiha Uranium. With a self-deprecating tone, Uchiha Uranium lay down, looked up at the starry night sky, and then looked at the black lake surface. In the past, the lake's surface could reflect the stars in the sky, but now there is only dead silence. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Environmental destroyer, really? Why is it like this? It really goes wherever you go, and you die there. It seems that I can't go to the source, and I'll go to the last tributary in the future, Alice. The night always makes him have endless reverie, whether it is an important idea about his future or a nonsensical delusion, which always gives him an illusion that he is living a good life. There are no soul beasts around anymore. A terrifying shadow wanders in this world full of corpses. It is a ghost that only looks for prey and opponents. This used to be a forest full of birdsong and flowers. Countless soul beasts gathered together, lived around the lake, and drank the water from the same source. As long as the carnivorous soul beasts were full, there would be carnivores and herbivores drinking water together, and they would relax with each other and lie lazily beside to bask in the sun. But one day, an unknown terrifying soul beast came. With its coercion, all the soul beasts were soon driven out, and the water source was occupied. The soul beasts without water could only drink water from the branches and other sources. At this time, the scene was no longer the same as before. Because the soul beasts were driven out by the terrifying soul beasts in the forest lake, they could only be forced to enter the territory of other soul beasts to compete for the right to survive, drink water, and safety. Blood flowed everywhere, and among them, a mutant creature that ingested a large amount of radiation was born. It was heading towards the source of the radiation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15: The Road Ahead. The next morning, the sun rose slowly from the east, and the early morning sunlight fell on the Xingdao Great Forest. Through the dense branches and leaves, it formed a bunch of small beams of light, shining on the misty and lingering forest. The breeze blew, but stopped in a dead place. The land gradually deepened from muddy yellow, and the trees began to become a little weird. The branches were twisted, and there were no living things. There was a rotten smell everywhere, just like hell. This is a completely different place from the forest. It is hard to imagine that there is such a scene in the forest. It makes people feel scared. Between the forest fog, a figure walked slowly in this illusion, stepping on the ground, making a slight sound, floating in this forest fog. There were no birds singing around, let alone beasts. There were only traces left by the nearby soul beasts fleeing in panic, indicating how urgent the past was. He was used to it, and had long been used to it. Living alone, walking alone, and practicing alone. Although this kind of life is boring, it makes people know what loneliness and freedom mean. Life is nothing more than being born and surviving. Although life in the forest is difficult, the seasonings are gone and the clothes are worn out, so what? If there is no seasoning, then find a plant to replace it. If the clothes are worn out and can't be worn at all, then sew animal skins and wear them as clothes. It doesn't matter. Anyway, there is no one in the forest, even if he is naked. But his only sense of shame stopped him. The road he is walking now is the one he has explored before, that is, the road where he encountered the exploding owlbear. Today, he is no longer afraid. With his current quality, if he encounters the 1,000-year soul beast again, he will have a certain ability to fight back, instead of relying on nuclear radiation to wear him to death. Although his current level 20 soul power is still very weak, the 3 years of training are not for show. The power of self-preservation is in his hands. The reason why he took this road was simple. He wanted to see the skeleton of the corpse before. He wanted to know what had happened. Someone actually broke into the forest alone. Although there were many soul beasts here and it was the closest to the city, this was not a reason for a person to come here to obtain soul rings. Maybe he was thinking wrongly. He was not alone, but so what? With the strength of the exploding owlbear, if you don't have a certain level of soul power, meeting him is a death sentence. And soul beasts stronger than the exploding owlbear are everywhere. He once wanted to look through it, but he felt that the depths of the forest were too dangerous at the time, and there was no need to venture deeper. But at this moment, the time has come. If he doesn't set out to go deep into the forest to obtain soul rings, he may have to drink the water of the forest lake for several more days. Although the nuclear radiation in it didn't matter to him, after all, he was the source of radiation, and how could the things emitted from him hurt him? The most important thing was that it was too dirty. He blocked the tributary, which was equivalent to the forest lake becoming a dead pool with no place to flow. Tisk, as long as you drink it for a few days, the smell will linger on your body for more than a month. As for the water you drink during this period, don't ask about this kind of thing, it hurts feelings. How long will it take? Why doesn't this fog disperse? If I take the wrong road, I'm doomed. Uchiha Uranium looked at the faint mist around him and was a little annoyed for a while. The forest was no threat to him. He was just afraid that he would waste time if he took the wrong road. He would have to turn back at that time, which made him angry. There was no way. His radiation could not dispel the aura, and he just had to keep going. What he lacked the least was time. At worst, he could take his time. After figuring this out and comforting himself, the boy continued to move forward. Soon, he came to a boulder, surrounded by rotten plants, and a large pool of black soil on the ground, which was darker than the surrounding color and looked quite weird. Is this the place where I almost died? Uchiha Uranium put his hand on the boulder and touched it all the way down. He stated the place where he had hit for a while. Now he can still recall the extremely dangerous scene in his mind. He was suddenly attacked and was knocked back more than 10 meters. He rolled and hit the boulder, and finally fainted in pain. If the exploding Albert had not died of radiation first, he would not have seen the sun the next day. If he had not used the side of the machete to protect his neck and head on a whim, the blow would not have simply knocked him away, but would have smashed his head and neck, killing him on the spot. My intuition saved my life. Although the bear is still full of doubts, I have no place to verify it now. Alice with a sigh, the boy continued to look at the dark black ground where the exploding Albert fell. There's nothing to see. I'm lucky to be alive. After a moment, the boy continued on his journey. This place is where he transcends life and death, his past, and his past. And if he continues to move forward, it means that he is no longer bound by the past and says goodbye to the past. He wants to move forward and go further. Soon, after an hour and a half, he arrived in front of the tree hole. As noon approached, the surrounding fog had dissipated without knowing when, leaving only a hazy moisture still lingering on the surrounding vegetation, indicating that he had been here before. After 3 years, this tree hole was more dilapidated than any he had seen before, but the hole was very large. It seemed that some soul beast had tried to scratch it open. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be for the meat inside. In other words, he might not find anything. With such doubts, the boy first set up 3 traps around it, fearing that a sudden attack would happen again, and then used a torch to illuminate the situation inside the tree hole. The latest novel is published on the 69th book bar. Half a human skeleton, torn leather armor scattered around, and a long sword that had long been bent. Everything seemed so normal, just a soul master died here. Soon, the boy dragged the skeleton out. The bones were very loose, and there was a pit when you pinched them. This was very different from normal human bones. You know, even if a person has been dead for 10 years, his bones would not be like this, they would be hard. Is there something hidden? He muttered to himself, and continued to look around, trying to find some clues, such as documents, letters, badges, clothing, etc. He even looked at the end of the long sword to see if there was any mark. Unfortunately, the surroundings were too damaged, and there was nothing useful for him to figure out what happened. The leather armor had rotted under the erosion of nature, and the long sword was rusty. There was nothing on the lower body, which was cut off from the lumbar vertebrae. From the gap, it should be something very large. The waist was gone after one bite. But it was strange, why only half was eaten? If you can swallow half of the body, then the other half would not be easy? The boy suddenly found something a little abnormal. I have something to tell you, because the editor in charge looks at the follow-up reading, which means that the editor can see the number of readers of each chapter. For my contract, please. Don't raise books. If you really want to raise them, you can wait until later. Please. Chapter 16, Traces of a Fierce Fight. But no matter how abnormal it is, it has nothing to do with him. 3 years have passed, and all clues have disappeared. He can't go back 3 years ago to come here to find a reason, right? The motivation that supported him to come here was just to make up for the regret that he couldn't witness in the past. Now it seems that it's no big deal. In this case, there's nothing to see. Shaking his head, Uchiha Uranium turned and left. Although it was not easy for him to meet a human, even if it was a corpse, it also meant that he was not far away from human life. He hoped that he would be as far away from human society as possible. After all, humans don't have the beast instincts of soul beasts. If you stay around him for a long time, you will really die. But as time went by, he went deeper and deeper, the branches and leaves became more and more dense, and there was no longer as much light as before. And these roads trampled by soul beasts also helped him to open up the direction. There were no roads in the world, but when soul beasts walked more, they became roads. The Xingdao Great Forest is very big, which is recognized by everyone, but this size is far beyond people's imagination. After walking for another whole day, at night, Uchiha Uranium could still feel that the surroundings were no different from before. This place was even stranger than a maze. Although there were many different trees, the bushes were definitely replicated, one after another. Moreover, after walking for such a long time, he could still feel that he was still on the periphery. The soul beasts that originally lived around were driven away by his aura. They either spread to the surroundings to compete with soul beasts of the same level for the right to survive, or drilled into the depths to fight those terrifying 1,000-year soul beasts, or even 10,000-year soul beasts. However, the probability of this was not high, because his position was not at the edge of the depths, but at the periphery. In other words, his opponents were only 100-year soul beasts, and at most a few thousand-year soul beasts like the boss of the territory. The others were no longer a threat to him. He didn't know whether it was because the 1,000-year soul beasts were no longer afraid of the fear of nuclear radiation, which led to the exploding owlbear attacking him, or whether there was something wrong with the exploding owlbear itself. He could only say that he encountered too few 1,000-year soul beasts, so few that there were not enough samples to verify his guess. Alice, the new place is more charming than the old one. After sighing for a while, Uchiha Uranium moved his head and looked at the dark surroundings. Although others would think this place is dangerous and uneasy, the boy felt unprecedented peace of mind. He slept in the air. There were 2 tough vines tied between 2 trees. In the middle was a large bed made of vines, similar to a hammock, but higher than a hammock, nearly 3 meters above the ground. It was very difficult to climb and sleep on it, not to mention that it would be easy to break bones if he fell. He was having fun. His soul master's physique was different from before. Not to mention a cricket falling 3 meters, he was not afraid even if he fell 5 meters. For safety reasons, he placed traps all around. Anyway, it would be useless if he didn't use them, so he put them first. This was also the reason why he chose to sleep in the air. He was afraid that if there was a sudden attack from underground, he would bypass the traps and attack him directly. Now he was not in a safe camp. In order to prevent a situation like the exploding owlbear, it was better to be safe. After 3 days of traveling, Uchiha Uranium finally encountered something unusual. There was a strong smell of blood around. Uchiha Uranium opened his martial soul and did not hold back. Instead, he used all his soul power. If there was anything wrong, he would leave the place. Then he began to explore carefully. Since there was a smell of blood, the soul beast that did it was also around. He could not be careless. Soon, the boy came to the area where the smell of blood was the strongest. Blood was pouring on the surrounding trees, bushes and branches like ink. The amount of bleeding was far more than that of 2 or 3 people. Even a large soul beast would die under such blood loss. Moreover, the blood had not yet clotted and was still very fresh. This situation further indicated that the predator might not have gone far. This is a slaughterhouse. A huge bull-like soul beast died here. The fatal wound on its abdomen should be caused by the nature of energy. There were no traces of claws and teeth on the wound, but there were many wounds all over its body. Most of the blood spatters came from these wounds, which means that before completely killing the prey, it still tortured and killed for a while, cruelly bleeding and slaughtering, and finally got tired of killing the prey, and left gracefully without eating any internal organs or flesh. This is the scene that Uchiha Uranium imagined. It is obvious that this predator only wants to kill, and does not care about being full at all. It fully shows that this soul beast is a type with high intelligence. It is no longer satisfied with killing for survival, but more for its own happiness. It's a bit like a cat. After watching for a long time, the boy came to a conclusion. Cats do this, torturing mice, birds and other creatures weaker than it, and when it has had enough fun, it will end the suffering of its prey. But since this soul beast won't touch anything, I'll accept it with a smile. This much meat is enough for me to eat for many days. Uchiha Uranium smiled and rubbed his hands, took out a dagger that was a bit old but still flashing with cold light from the Space Soul Guide, and began to cut the meat. Not long after cleaning up, the boy put away the tools, looked at the harvest with some satisfaction, and continued to move forward after making sure that there was nothing else missing around. After a while, he came to a place with obvious signs of a fierce fight. Uchiha Uranium slowly squatted down, picked up a ball of soil from the ground, and began to explore the surroundings. Both parties had left long ago, but the traces were still preserved. From the splashing soil, it can be inferred that it should be a battle that took place in the past few days. Both parties should be agile types, one using soul power with strong cutting ability, and the other should have both strength and speed. The physical body alone is enough to match the skills of soul power control. The reason for this inference is that the fallen trees around him were cut in an instant and then fell slowly, rather than being cut off bit by bit like a chainsaw. The other soul beast was even simpler, and there were several gaps and traces around him that were obviously caused by physical attacks such as pounces and sweeps. Judging from the splashes of blood and mud around him, neither side should have gained any advantage. After a brief fight, each was afraid and left on its own. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. Analyzing these things is not because he is bored, but to increase his experience and make it easier to analyze the distribution of the surrounding soul beasts in combination with the content of the book. The most important thing is that he has not encountered such a battle between soul beasts for a long time, and he is really bored. This kind of interesting thing is rare. If he has a notebook, he even wants to record it. As far as he knows, there are quite a few soul beasts that live in the forest, are extremely fast, and use cutting type skills. However, according to the current situation, there are not many soul beasts of about 100 to 1000 years that can fight against soul beasts with both speed and strength. Whether it is the blue wolf, the wind leopard, the iris beast, the flying orangutan, or anything else, it is possible. Finally, after seeing the traces on the ground, the boy's face was a little strange. Then he stood up in a depressed manner, leaned against the surviving big tree, and muttered something unconsciously. Why am I so stupid? I thought about it and thought about it. Why didn't I know what the footprints were first? I didn't even look at something that was obvious. How could I be so stupid? On the ground, a trace of 4 toes and a meat pad was clearly printed on the ground. That was the footprint of a wolf. I'm going to sleep now. I will continue to update tomorrow morning. I'm taking a rest today. I must finish all the chapters, otherwise I will be embarrassed. By the way, as promised, if someone can guess which spirit ring it is, I will add another picture, and will update it today. Chapter 17 Peeping at the Water Source. As he continued to move forward, he saw more and more traces of fighting. I don't know if it was because of Uchiha Uranium, but all the soul beasts living around him began to scatter in all directions, which led to various conflicts between soul beasts. There were many hundred-year soul beasts that were intimidated by him and directly collided with thousand-year soul beasts. This invisible and intangible protection made him feel at ease. After all, if he wanted to rely on himself to cross this place where a large number of soul beasts lived, he couldn't do it without a soul power of level 40 or 50. After all, there were many soul beasts and few people. However, his goal was to find a water source, not to fight to the death with those brainless soul beasts. What if he encountered the same kind of guy as the exploding owlbear before? Pump, what are you talking about? I will definitely not meet him. After feeling that he had said something bad, Uchiha Uranium looked around with some suspicion, fearing that the words in his mouth would directly affect reality, and something would really come out to chase him and beat him up. Water sources are not so easy to find. The reason why he walked so far was nothing more than wanting to get out of the sphere of influence of the previous forest lake. According to the theory of water source distribution, there must be relatively dense small water sources near a large water source, such as springs, streams, etc., and most of them are large water sources branching out from underground. But similarly, there must be no water sources of the same scale near a large water source, unless the water conservancy in this place is particularly good and the groundwater is densely distributed, but the forest is obviously not such an environment, so he will walk far away. In Uchiha Uranium's opinion, it will take about 3 days, or 5 days, or 7 days to reach the depths of the forest. After all, he is a soul master. He keeps moving forward at the speed of using soul power, so his walking speed is naturally not slow. In addition, the outer edge of the forest is not the majority of the Xingdao Great Forest, but only a small circle. The real environment of the Xingdao Great Forest is still the so-called deep forest, the actual middle of the forest. When you reach the depths of the Xingdao Great Forest, the distribution, existence, habitat, etc. of soul beasts will begin to be varied. The Xingdao Great Forest is too large. If the single round area is measured, It can even be comparable to the Bara Kingdom. There are also many kinds of soul beasts living in it, which is why soul masters come to the Xingdao Great Forest to obtain soul rings, because as long as they enter the forest, there will definitely be soul beasts suitable for them. But this is also a forbidden area for life. Terrifying high-level soul beasts emerge in an endless stream. Once some unwise actions are made, such as making a fire, or slaughtering a large number of low-level soul beasts, causing the bloody smell to spread far away, etc., it will attract the attention of a large number of soul beasts, and then, haha, what else can be done? The towering trees are straight up to the sky. The dense trees are like giant umbrellas. They are rooted deep in the earth, and the branches and leaves that grow arbitrarily block the scorching sun. The temperature in the forest is lower than before. At noon, Uchiha Uranium stopped under a huge rock, kicked off the things around him with his feet, took out a piece of animal skin and spread it on the ground, sat on it, took out a piece of dark brown meat from the soul guide, and then took out the filtered but still somewhat turbid water, and began to solve his lunch problem in small sips. The meat was smoked like this. He had prepared for the long journey and made a lot of dried meat in advance. Although it tasted bad and had a light salty taste, it was enough as long as it could fill his stomach. He had almost used up all the salt. In less than half a year, there would be no seasoning left from the tribe. So in order to extend the time, he didn't put much salt on the smoked meat. Anyway, it was enough to eat. It was dry. He could drink some water and swallow it to deal with his stomach, and there would be no problem. After eating, he continued to walk forward in silence as before. If you observe the road he walked carefully, you will find that both the land and the forest are covered with a layer of light gray. The forest at night was quiet, and occasionally there was the roar of an unknown soul beast in the distance, or the sound of a bird with strong penetrating power. But there was nothing around him. Through the gaps in the leaves, you can see a bright moon hanging in the night. A hammock has been built. Under the hammock, there is a burning bonfire. Without the influence of wind, the campfire emitted an orange light, crackling and emitting some sparks from time to time. There was no danger around, and no soul beasts were wandering around, unless they wanted to die. For soul beasts, nuclear radiation is emitted much faster than plants, not to mention that as his soul power level increased, the concentration of radiation became higher and higher. The lake in the forest was a typical example. He had just finished dinner and was very full. In the light of the campfire, he described the past on the ground, just like taking notes, but the charcoal pencil could obviously only record a few things, so he was thinking about what to write. The charcoal pencil he used was made by burning one end of the firewood black and then sharpening it. After a while, a flame suddenly jumped out of the campfire and landed in front of his eyes, scaring the boy to jump up. After seeing what it was, he smiled with some relief. The forest is rich in resources, whether it is sour and sweet fruits or strange soul beast remains, they can always give him new experiences. This journey is far from being comparable to the boring life in the forest lake. There are too many interesting things here. Of course, if other soul masters or masters of the level of fighting soul come here, it will not be as simple as just interesting. The night is getting darker and darker. The forest looks deeper and more terrifying. Predators often go out at night. This makes the forest at night much more dangerous than during the day. Even Uchiha Uranium, who is in the safety center, can hear the screams of soul beasts being attacked in the forest in the distance. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Huh? It's so late. Go to sleep. Wiping the sweat from his forehead due to being close to the campfire, Uchiha Uranium put away the diary he had completed, put it into the soul guide, then jumped to the hammock, took out the shiny fur as a blanket, and went to sleep directly. He got up at random the next day. Day 5. After walking for 2 hours, Uchiha Uranium tried to sniff the air and suddenly felt a little moist in his nasal cavity, which was different from the past. It seems that there is water in the air. He closed his eyes and opened his mouth slightly, and took another deep breath. The moist air mixed with the water in the air refreshed him. It can't be wrong, there is a water source nearby. Uchiha Uranium moved his legs, following the sound of flowing water and the direction of moisture in the air, and moved forward bit by bit. After a while, there's indeed water here. The boy followed the moist smell in the air and found a somewhat wide pool of water. No, it would be more appropriate to describe it as a lake. The sound of flowing water he heard was from one of the streams flowing downwards. Seeing the water source, he was already a little impatient. He had drunk enough of that strange-smelling water, and he hadn't washed his body for a long time. His whole body suddenly became sticky after seeing the water source. Huh? Suddenly, the boy raised his head abruptly and stopped drinking water. The radiation eyes in his pupils began to rotate unconsciously, and the yellow soul rings moved up and down his body. He had entered a state of combat readiness. He only needed a little disturbance to bounce up and leave the place instantly. Around the water source, he felt a strong sense of malice. Chapter 18, Millennium Soul Beast Windside the Beast. Here it comes. In an instant, a strong breath of death hit him. Uchiha Uranium's face was as heavy as iron. He quickly recalled that there was no trace of Soul Beast fighting along the way, that is, he was in a Soul Beast territory that occupied the water source and expelled all creatures. How would it attack? Where would it attack from? One question after another lingered in his mind anxiously, which made it a little difficult for him to analyze what was happening in front of him. Now, without hesitation, Uchiha Uranium's eyes flashed, and after feeling the fishy smell coming from behind, he suddenly plunged into the lake. The shore was shallow, but he had already felt the touch of mud splashing. If he guessed correctly, it just missed. As soon as he entered the water, the boy swam his body quickly like a fish, and swam quickly towards the center of the lake. This was the best way he could think of in an emergency. If he rolled to the left and right, the soul beast that attacked him would probably swing its steel tail or use skills at close range, and he would probably not be able to fight back because he was too close. After all, this was a forest environment, and there was no soul beast that was good at swimming. And if he was really good at swimming, then he would not have attacked from behind, but in the water. As expected, after diving deep into the lake, there was no movement around, no sound of entering the water, and no sound of skills bombarding the lake surface. Uchiha Uranium knew that it was still very dangerous now. He could only show his head after reaching the center of the lake and being safe enough. He had been diving and swimming in the forest lake for many years. He thought that he would never need it again after he left, but he didn't expect that it would save his life at this moment. Huh? About a minute later, Uchiha Uranium surfaced and glanced at the place where he was originally, with a solemn expression. There was a big pit under his feet, with a power comparable to that of a grenade. If he hadn't acted decisively, I'm afraid the lower half of his body would be gone. And around the pit, there was a medium-sized cat soul beast, staring at him in the lake with a cruel look. This is... Uchiha Uranium first looked at the soul beast that was as tall as a man and had an overall khaki color. Then, when he saw the 12 black ring-shaped spots on its tail, his face changed. A 1,200-year-old whimsical beast. He remembered the records in the Soul Beast Encyclopedia. He had taken the time to read the Soul Beast Encyclopedia. Although it only recorded known soul beasts, the soul beast in front of him, named Whimsical Beast, happened to be among them. If it was another kind of soul beast, he might not be so frightened. After all, soul beasts also need to hunt. It is impossible for them to keep staring at him. Is it not eating? But the whimsical beast is different. It has a partner. It can hunt one while the other waits for the opportunity. Sure enough, when his thoughts were turning rapidly, a sharp whistle suddenly came from the forest. The next moment, a whimsical beast that was slightly smaller and thinner than the previous soul beast rushed out of the bushes. The two soul beasts stared at him, and one of them began to run around the lake, trying to block him in the lake. In the critical moment, Uchiha Uranium began to think of countermeasures quickly in his mind, and at the same time he was recalling the description of the whimsical beast in the Soul Beast Encyclopedia. It moves very fast, its claws are like sickles, and its jumping ability is extremely terrifying. When it moves in the forest, it often jumps from the trunk of a tree to another tree, just like flying, so it is called the wind. And it is very good at long-range attacks, and the wind blades it spits out from its mouth can reach a very long distance. Very far. Suddenly thinking of this word in his mind, the boy's face suddenly changed, and then he plunged into the lake. The next moment, a wind blade fell on the water's surface. With a muffled sound, the lake's surface was quickly stained red with blood. The boy under the lake looked a little pale. The wind blade just now was heading for his head. On the lake surface, blood was scattered and overflowed with the fluctuations of the lake water, and soon, it infected the surroundings. The two soul beasts seemed to feel that this had an effect. After the first wind blade fell, the second and third wind blades fell into the water together, but no blood appeared. 2 minutes later, his lungs could no longer hold out. After feeling that there were no more wind blades coming out, the boy slowly floated up, raised his head above the water, took a deep breath, and plunged into the water again. The next moment, the wind blades followed one after another, but he was now alert and would never stay on the lake for too long. At this time, he was also secretly relieved. Fortunately, he did not stay on the ground. Otherwise, with his level 20 soul power and without his second soul ring, he would face 2,000-year soul beasts alone, and they were a couple who cooperated tacitly. He might not be able to hold out for 10 seconds. But he was very frustrated now. He could only hold out for 2 minutes at most under the lake. If he used his soul power, he could only hold out for a while longer. In front of these two wind-sickle beasts, the soul ancestor would die on the spot. Only the soul king could retreat unscathed in front of these two soul beasts. What should I do? What should I do? Suddenly, a crazy idea came to the boy's mind. He remembered the exploding owlbear that was infected with severe radiation because of attacking him. If the previous experience was repeated, could he get out at this moment? The latest novel is first published on 69 Shuba. The next moment, the boy rejected this idea. The situation was different. The exploding owlbear could not catch up with him, so the radiation had time to ferment in his body. Now, any one of the two soul beasts was 10 times faster than him. I am afraid that he would be torn into pieces in less than a minute after his blood was spilled. He went up to take a breath and floated down again. If he only relied on the current blood to infect the surroundings, it would probably take several days to see the effect. The amount of radiation was too small. Moreover, if he really did not eat or drink for 2 or 3 days and did not sleep in the water, he would probably die without waiting for the soul beasts to eat him. Time passed little by little. As time went by, the sun gradually went to the sunset, but the two wind-sickle beasts by the lake still showed no signs of leaving, as if they had eaten him. The boy was getting more and more anxious. He knew that he would not be able to see anything at night, and soul beasts basically had night vision, which meant that once they entered the water, he might be killed without knowing it. It's time to take a risk. In his mind, the boy thought of a more dangerous plan than the previous one, but it was likely to be effective. For this idea, he felt that he needed to think carefully. After all, one of the two soul beasts would leave at some point. They couldn't just not eat or drink like him, so the time he needed to wait for was when one of them went to hunt. This was his chance. He was going to go ashore. This was not suicide, this was a strategy. He thought that since his blood was infected so quickly, what if it bit off a piece of his meat? Chapter 19 Death. This is very risky. And if there are other ways, he doesn't want to do this kind of behavior of feeding soul beasts. It's too dangerous. If he is not careful, it will become real and he will die in the mouth of the wind-sickle beast. But he has no choice. Once night falls, he will have no advantage at all. He is in the water, but he is blind at night and can't see anything. What's more, his wound is still bleeding. He is soaking in the lake and has no chance to bandage it. Once he gets infected with high fever, tetanus, or other messy things because of this wound, he will die soon without a physical advantage. Think about it again. After hesitating for a moment, Uchiha Uranium still didn't make this decision. He still wanted to find other breakthroughs. What if these two soul beasts retreated because they couldn't eat him? The sun set, leaving only the last bit of light around. If there is no accident, the last bit of light will disappear in 10 minutes at most. For no reason, the boy suddenly felt his heart tighten. If he doesn't make a decision, it will be too late when there is no light at all. Uchiha Uranium gritted his teeth and ventured to the surface. He quickly looked around and was delighted to see one less soul beast. The smaller soul beast remained in place. The male seemed to be going to hunt. The female wind-sickle beast's eyes were not as cruel as the male one, but that was only relative. For Uchiha Uranium, the danger of the two was not much different. It was just that there was one less to deal with, which gave him enough room to play. He had decided. He was going to go ashore. Uchiha Uranium's eyes narrowed slightly, took a deep breath, and after seeing that the wind-sickle beast no longer spit out wind blades at him, it seemed that this was ineffective. He suddenly returned to the water again, and then swam quickly with his legs, swimming quickly in the opposite direction of the soul beast. He had just planned a course of action within 10 seconds. He first went ashore and quickly set up traps, and then joined the wind-sickle beast that rushed over. After being injured, he rushed directly to the trap, relying on the exploding trap to deter the soul beast chasing behind him, so that he could fall into the water and escape safely. Land is definitely the most dangerous choice. The wind-sickle beast moves quickly, and he will be caught up before he can run far. This is not a cave environment, which can give him a place to implement. This is the Dou Great Forest. Not long after, a figure emerged from the water opposite the Windsickle Beast. The next moment, in Uchiha Uranium's feeling, a creepy sight suddenly stopped on him. He knew that he only had a few seconds to set the trap, and the Windsickle Beast would not take long to bypass this lake. There was no time to find a suitable trap location. Uchiha Uranium simply placed one in front of him, and 2 miniature traps appeared between his hands again. The surrounding dim forest environment was mixed with the sound of wind, making a rustling sound. After setting up 3 traps, the attack he expected also arrived as expected. Roar. A roar sounded in the forest, frightening the boy and causing goosebumps. A bloody gust of wind greeted the boy, jumped high, and attacked him from behind. Uchiha Uranium's hair stood up, and the single Magadama radiation eye in his pupils turned rapidly. Although he didn't see the lightning-fast figure behind him, he had already felt it intuitively. It was very close. Very close. He couldn't take it head-on, otherwise he would die. Dodge. Quickly dodge. The intuition of danger told Uchiha Uranium that while his brain was still thinking about which direction to roll, his body immediately reacted. He stepped on his feet and used all his strength to roll forward. The force was so great that Uchiha Uranium felt that the wound on his shoulder blade had split again, and a little blood burst out and remained in place. Bang! The mud on the spot splashed, and a yellow and black soul beast stood in the same place. A big pit appeared in the same place, which was completely unlike what an ordinary slap could do. It was a skill. He didn't have time to feel the pain, so he stood up immediately and took out a sharp weapon from his soul guide, the ribs of a soul beast he had encountered before. He held the sharp bone spear tightly, looking forward, staring at the Windsickle Beast that attacked him. In the dim light, Uchiha Uranium could see that the eyes of this soul beast were emitting points of light like will-o'-the-wisp at night, and its cyan eyes revealed a crazy killing intent that made people feel cold. The dust caused by the slapping gradually settled, and he could feel that this soul beast, which was as tall as a man, brought him tremendous pressure. He was being stared at closely, as if he would be attacked terribly if he moved. Just by seeing the fangs exposed in its mouth, its sturdy limbs, and its 2-inch-long sharp claws, he knew that if he touched any of the above, he would definitely break bones and tendons. But he still had a little question in his mind, why the eyes of this soul beast revealed almost the same as the exploding owlbear he had encountered before. Roar under Uchiha Uranium's nervous gaze, suddenly, the wind-scythe beast moved. Is it coming? A flash of yellow light flashed before his eyes. Before he could react, Uchiha Uranium could only hastily raise his bone spear. The next moment, a huge force came from the middle of the bone spear. With a cracking sound, the bone spear that he had high hopes for broke directly. The sharp ends of the 2 ends directly pierced into his chest and abdomen, causing him to stare out of pain. It wasn't over yet. He had just landed after being slapped away. His ears were buzzing, and he saw a figure leaping from the air and rushing towards him. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Hide. Hide quickly. The current situation was similar to what he had experienced before, but he had no strength to roll over after being slapped away. The pain in his chest and abdomen was still stimulating him. If the bone spear hadn't blocked the claw just now, he would have been slapped in half. Suddenly, in a very short time, the boy picked up the half-bone spear scattered on the side, and aimed the pointed end at the soul beast in midair, which had nowhere to unload its force. He wanted to gamble that if this Windsickle Beast was really crazy, he would be dead, although this bone spear would pierce the body of the Windsickle Beast and die on the ground. But he would also be killed by the soul beast that fell from the sky. In his current situation, he could not roll at all. But if this female Windsickle Beast was not crazy, the soul beast would definitely not die with him. After all, facing life and death, unless he killed its partner, life would not seek death. The most important thing is that it has a partner. If it is really crazy, how can it still have a partner? Facing the test of life and death, the boy looked at the soul beast getting closer and closer to him in mid-air, and countless images flashed through his mind. Whether it lives or dies depends on whether this soul beast wants to dodge. As a soul beast, what's the point of dying together with humans? Dodge. The next moment, the boy closed his eyes in despair. The black and yellow figure in the air fell down and hit the boy hard. A pair of sickle-like claws cut open his chest, and his ribs were cut off abruptly, but he had no strength to continue cutting. A bone spear stood beside him and pierced through the pupil of the whimsical beast. When the whimsical beast hit it, it sent a pale rib directly into its brain. It was unwilling to even move its head. Chapter 22 Magadama Radiant Eyes. Huh? Uchiha Uranium breathed heavily, looking at the gradually darkening forest around him with a terrified look. The attack just now almost crushed him to death on the spot, and the sickle-like claws directly ripped him open. It was so thrilling. The huge wound on his chest was still radiating pain. When his adrenaline was surging just now, he couldn't feel it, but now that he calmed down, the heart-wrenching pain swept through his body. His ribs were broken and his lower body was unconscious. It should be crushed. The chest was cut open. All signs showed that he was going to die here. I really don't want to accept it. The boy felt a strange peace and tranquility at this moment. Then, this tranquility faded in his heart, and was replaced by fear that spread like fog. He knew that death was coming, and this fear was the fear of death. In fact, in the battle just now, he was also facing death. But at that time, his mind was only filled with a fear of failure. There is no doubt that he failed. The feeling of death slowly approaching is not pleasant at all. The boy felt his life slipping away, quietly, without a sound. Unconsciously, a tear slipped from the corner of his eye. He recalled the first night he came to the Star Forest. The stars in the sky shone with incomparable beauty, showing him the charm of nature. Now, the stars are still shining, but he has stepped on the edge of death. Forced to leave human society and enter the Star Forest accompanied by death, he worked hard to collect vines for the house, but it quickly rotted due to radiation and was not even fully occupied for a month. In order to prevent the radiation from continuing to poison the surrounding environment along the tributary, he dived into the lake to block the flow of holes. In order to eat salt for a longer time, every meal was like chewing wax, with only a hint of salt. In order to drink clean water, he filtered and heated it again and again, but he could not get rid of the weird taste. He has obviously tried his best to live. Why is it like this? Tears flowed, and who could he tell about the grievances and bitterness in his heart? This is not the life he wants. He shouldn't be like this. The whimsical beast will smell the blood at any time and rush over. He must act. In his heart, it seems that there is a little man roaring at him. Have you really given up? The hard life didn't defeat you. Can such a soul beast do it? Stand up. The single Magadama radiation eye in Uchiha Uranium's pupil began to rotate. As the helplessness and sadness in his mind continued to emerge in front of his eyes, the scenes of the past stimulated him, making him stand up and continue to move forward. I must not fall down. Along with the roar, the next moment, the second fan-shaped Magadama appeared in his pupil. A warm current instantly flowed down from his eyes. In an instant, his internal organs trembled. The originally blurry environment became clear at this moment, just like 360 suddenly switched to 1080. The dark vision around him was no longer an obstacle. He could see. The wounds all over his body seemed to feel numb, especially in the chest and abdomen, which felt even more numb, as if granulation tissue was growing rapidly, accelerating the healing of the wounds. Unfortunately, this only lasted for less than a minute, and his wounds did not heal. It was just a simple acceleration to stop the bleeding. Not only did his physical fitness improve, but his originally numb lower limbs also felt a little bit at this moment. The increase of the radiation Magadama could actually improve his physical fitness and bring new strength. Gritting his teeth and enduring the severe pain from all parts of his body, Uchiha Uranium stood up and pushed away the corpse of the whimsical beast pressing on his thigh, driving his legs, trying to find a trace of perception. Great, I can move. After feeling that his toes could move, Uchiha Uranium's face was happy, which meant that his bones below the pelvis were not broken. Great, the physical fitness of a soul master is indeed much stronger than that of an ordinary person, and after 2 improvements of the radiation Magadama, his physical fitness is even better than that of other soul masters. If it were an ordinary person, I'm afraid he would have suffered a comminuted fracture of the lower body. However, he had just bent his knees when the sudden pain almost made him bite his tongue. This also cast a shadow on the boy's heart. There was no bone fracture, but it was probably broken. Gritting his teeth, the boy first used the bandage in the medical bag to wrap around himself more than 10 times until it was used up, to ensure that the gap in his stomach would not suddenly split open, and then all his internal organs would be spilled out. Then he tied his upper body tightly with clothes to prevent the wound from being exposed. Finally, he turned sideways, endured the numbness and tingling in his legs, and stood up little by little. A quarter of an hour later, he held on to the tree trunk beside him, gasping for breath, and watched the body of the whimsical beast beside him begin to change. A faint purple light began to condense above the body of the whimsical beast. He had only seen it when he first obtained the spirit ring before, and now he saw the spirit ring for the second time, and it was from this situation. The color of the light was a little light, which showed that this female whimsical beast had not been in the level of a 1,000-year spirit beast for a long time. Even without touching it, the boy could clearly feel the huge energy contained in it. The latest novel is first published on 69 Shoe Bar. Ahem, if the surroundings are safe, I would like to try and absorb this spirit ring. Anyway, in my situation, if there is no medicine, I will soon be infected and die. Uchiha Uranium laughed bitterly, holding the tree trunk, picked up some branches from the ground, processed them simply, and used them as crutches to support himself to move forward. He thought of a solution that was not a solution. Go to the tree. Of course, it is not a simple tree to climb up. After all, the wind blade has a long attack distance. He wants to climb a very tall tree, preferably with thick branches so that he can tie himself to the tree and sleep peacefully. But climbing up is extremely exhausting, and his current condition is worrying. If he moves around, the wound that has finally stopped bleeding will burst open soon. After he slowly left, the corpse of the whimsical beast on the spot began to ooze blood, interacting with the blood left by the surrounding Uchiha Uranium. Slowly, the surrounding plants began to die rapidly, the ground was eroded, and the corpses were also rotting faster. Uchiha Uranium, who has reached the 20th level of Soul Master, radiates more and more energy. According to previous situations, the radiation speed is not so fast. He is not aware of all this. He is currently still studying the new abilities he has gained with the Double Magatama. Sure enough, even if it is a mutated Sharingan, it still has the abilities that the original Sharingan should have: dynamic vision, copying, and illusion. If I guessed correctly, he should have gained the ability to copy. After all, his vision clarity just now has become stronger, and he can see through the situation of others' shots. But this is Douluo Continent, everyone uses soul skills, and he doesn't have other people's martial souls. What's the use of copying? But when he opened the two Magatama radiation eyes again, everything around him changed. Going to bed. I originally wanted to update 7 chapters today, to make up for yesterday, today and the extra chapters, but now it's so late, I'll leave it until tomorrow, to make up for 3 chapters tomorrow, and then slowly update 2 chapters. By the way, because I write at a slow pace, I want to write the feeling of the forest, so normally it's a bit watery. After all, in your eyes, the forest is nothing more than that, but I still want to write this Star Dou Great Forest well. After all, it's estimated that you won't come back for a long time after leaving the forest. Okay, I've said everything I wanted to say. I want to see if there are any of you who haven't invested. Hurry up, invest, and wait until I finish writing the extra chapters tomorrow, then I won't owe you any more chapters. Damn, the investment is over 50, haha. Then I'll update 4 chapters tomorrow depending on the situation. Chapter 21 Wounds. The world in Uchiha Uranium's eyes changed. The vision that was originally dim but still clear suddenly switched to black and white. There was no obvious change in the fallen leaves and branches, but they had lost their colors in his eyes. From an outsider's point of view, the boy's white pupils had gradually turned yellow, as if he had opened a special vision and could see things that ordinary people could not see. Well, this black and white vision is quite interesting. Suddenly, the night is no longer an obstacle to him. Although I could see clearly before, it is obvious that this is more powerful. Is this a new ability? While opening the special vision, he looked around. The surroundings were like daytime. Any darkness was displayed in front of these eyes without reservation. After a while, he suddenly felt a sore and numb feeling in his pupils, as if he had overused his eyes and needed a rest, so he unconsciously closed his eyes. The next moment, he opened his eyes again, and his pupils had returned to normal black, and the yellow whites of his eyes disappeared without a trace. It feels sore and numb, just like when I was studying hard at night during the college entrance examination, and my eyelids were extremely sore. So this is the side effect of using this vision? It can only last for a period of time. Uchiha Uranium stroked his closed left eye with his hand, and he already understood in his heart that he might not be able to open that vision again in a short period of time, but the exact time may require the next test. Back to the present, after closing the special vision, Uchiha Uranium returned to the original gloomy environment, But now he can see, and there is no situation of being tripped by stones on the roadside. Although he is not walking fast, he is consciously walking towards difficult terrain. Perhaps this will cause his wound to break, but there is no way. The complex terrain will also hinder the only remaining windsickle beast. And his previous thinking may be a bit wrong. The book does not say that a windsickle beast cannot climb trees, and judging from its swift movements, if it can climb trees, then he will be courting death. The best way at the moment is to find a cave-like place, surrounded on 3 sides with only an exit, and sprinkle some blood on the exit to make the surrounding corrode quickly, and then place some traps, so that there is no risk of error. But where can such an environment be found? For a moment, he was entangled. Should he continue to walk through this complex terrain full of tall rocks, or turn around and change direction and continue to walk, praying to get out of its hunting range? Forget it, this terrain full of rocks is okay, let's see if there are any caves first. After just a thought in his mind, Uchiha Uranium made up his mind. His time is precious, and it would be a waste of time to continue to go back. What if the windsickle beast that went out to hunt smells the blood and turns back halfway? He deserves to die stupidly. Huh? Have I been to this place before? After walking around, the boy looked at the identical environment around him with some doubts. He hesitated for a while. He was not sure if he had really been here, but he felt that this place was really familiar. Keep going, change direction. Gray stones are everywhere, and there are many stone caves, but Uchiha Uranium feels that it is not good. It is too shallow. It can only accommodate 1 person. There is no space for traps. What's the point? Moreover, this place similar to the stone formation is quite interesting. If you don't walk along the wall, it is easy to return to the original place. It's not the original place, but the height of the surrounding is similar. If you are not careful, you will be confused. It is very troublesome for him, but for the beast, it is not a problem at all. Because they can find the position of people by smell. After a while. This place, finally there is something to see. Uchiha Uranium looked at the black hole in front of him. Although it was a little narrow, the winding passage showed a very satisfied smile. This place is good. Only 1 person can go forward. The windsickle beast, which is larger than him, can't get in at all. There are several bends, which also offsets the advantage of the windsickle beast with a long-range skill of wind blade. If it was a straight stone cave, he would not dare to go in. If the windsickle beast blocked the entrance and released wind blades without cost, wouldn't he be dumbfounded? In his eyes, this crooked stone cave, which was similar to the one where a snake passed by, was as clear as day. Although it was dusty and full of spider webs, it was still a good place. He just needed a place to recuperate. The water and food he brought with him were enough for him to survive for more than a month. After a month, the windsickle beast would no longer stare at him, so he could leave at any time. Moreover, the windsickle beast had not found him for such a long time. It seemed that the radiation range of his body was larger than he thought. The soul beasts had all run away because of the radiation. The windsickle beast naturally needed to run farther to hunt prey. In addition, it would take a long time to turn back and follow the smell. Uchiha Uranium walked in directly. The first feeling was that it was very narrow and crowded. Although there was space for a person to turn his body, it was more troublesome. This place was more like a gap between 2 huge rocks. It was extremely narrow. Sure enough, after walking for nearly a quarter of an hour, he saw the exit at the back. This was not a cave, but only a passage, with no one at both ends. But this was acceptable to him. Although there was still the risk of sneak attacks from the back, his walking route was not fixed and he could only walk in front. At least he had a backup passage to use, so he would not be squatted at the door by the windsickle beast that had lost its wife. However, the most urgent thing now is to bend in the middle, but clean the wound well in a place with a little more space, otherwise it will get inflamed and infected, and I will die. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. While talking to himself, Uchiha Uranium arranged several soul skill traps in front and behind. With the increase of soul power, the power of the trap increased significantly, and the induction and explosion speed also increased to a certain extent. Generally speaking, it should be the type that is getting easier and easier to use, so it will not be so awkward to high-speed soul beasts when it was in the first ring. After arranging the security, Uchiha Uranium put up a few torches to illuminate the surrounding environment so that he could directly see what kind of wound he had. He slowly unbuttoned his clothes. The skin and flesh were somewhat stuck to the clothes because of the blood stains that seeped out. On the contrary, the wound twitched because of the opening of the clothes. Streams of blood began to flow out of the wound, but he held it down directly to prevent the blood from continuing to flow out. Hiss. Seeing the wound, Uchiha Uranium couldn't help but gasp. He was so lucky that he didn't die. Under the illumination of the torch, an obvious crack slashed diagonally from the right chest, cutting off the ribs and falling on the waist. If the incision was deeper, it would have ripped open his stomach. Come to the station to sign a contract, happy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Barking with Incompetence. Perhaps it was because he had killed the female wind-sickle beast in advance, and the bone spear had pierced into its pupil in advance, causing her death. She had exhausted her strength, so she did not use more force to cut him in half, but she still relied on her sharp blade claws to easily cut his ribs, and the remaining force did not decrease, and she also cut his skin. It was strange to say that the two life and death crises he had encountered so far were caused by soul beasts, and they had one thing in common: they were extremely crazy, and they did not have the kind of animal nature to survive for themselves, which was simply incomprehensible. The exploding owlbear was fine. After all, it came from an unknown place, and attacked as soon as they met. Although it did not roar much, it was reasonable to pursue silently. How to explain this wind-sickle beast with a partner? I had set up a deadly bone spear, but it still pounced on him, and it had a high probability of avoiding the bone spear if it slightly turned its head, but it did not even blink and watched itself being killed. This is too outrageous. The torch burned quietly, like a silent traveler, watching what the boy did. Hiss. The tearing of the wound continued. After removing his clothes, the boy quickly took out a pot of clean water from the soul guide ring. Unlike the turbid water for drinking, this clean water was once reserved for medical use. Unless the drinking water was finished, it would not be used. The clean water was gently poured on the wound to wash away the dirty blood and dust on the wound. However, as the wound was constantly stimulated, the waves of severe pain made him frown and tremble slightly. He was not a tough guy, and he did not have the willpower to wash the wound without saying a word. He was just simple and did not want to shout out because of the pain, and then attract the wind-sickle beast that might follow the smell early. After removing his clothes, he continued to slowly untie the used bandages, then took out the tent he had built, walked inside with a torch, and half leaned on the fur to prevent the dust in the cave from infecting the wound. Next, it was the highlight. Treating the wound. He had just done it hastily and simply before. Because the situation was urgent, he had to leave the place quickly, so he didn't treat the wound carefully. But if he didn't do it now, he might have a high fever the next day and be sick. The discarded bandages were thrown outside, and the blood-stained items needed to be replaced in time with clean bandages. This was the simplest principle of first aid, and he only knew this. His radiation could only bring destruction to the surroundings, and he couldn't treat. If he had a healing soul master here, would he still be like this? Half an hour later, Uchiha Uranium came out of the tent with a pale face and threw 5 bandages out. This place was very small, and there was no place to put a tent. But there was no tent. The stone cave was full of dust. It was terrifying to think about treating the wound in such an environment. He had just experienced the most terrifying thing in his life: suturing his own wound. Fortunately, there were hemp leaves. After chewing 2 pieces, his face and body were numb. He couldn't feel anything. He only felt that his skin and flesh were pierced by a thin thread, but there was no pain at all. The needle was made of a small finger bone from a certain animal, probably a rat-like soul beast. The thread was the thin thread that he had taken off his clothes earlier. It was fine as long as it worked, and he didn't expect too much. Suddenly, Uchiha Uranium felt something strange around him, as if a creature had suddenly broken into his apparently safe surroundings. Although he was not sure if it was a threat, this ultra-long-range alert range also made him secretly frightened. Is this also the effect of the 2 Magadama radiation eyes? The only one who dared to come within his radiation area was probably the 1,000-year soul beast, the wind-sickle beast. The hatred for killing his wife was irreconcilable, but it took so long to find him. Isn't it a bit lame? Roar. As expected, The enemies were particularly jealous when they met. After finding him, the wind sickle beast directly spit out a thick wind blade and flew straight to Uchiha Uranium in the cave. Boom! The wind blade exploded instantly after it touched the wall, the broken stones burst, and a large amount of dust was raised. The remaining force had already dissipated the soul power, and did not hurt Uchiha Uranium in the deep. Unfortunately, this is the place carefully selected by Uchiha Uranium. Although it can allow people to pass through, it cannot meet the requirements of beasts to enter. Moreover, the passage is long enough and has a tortuous path. Any long-range attack, such as the wind blade, can't touch him at all. The boy simply circled around, and the wind sickle beast could no longer see any trace of the boy. In addition to the bloody smell in the cave, it was still locating his position, stimulating this furious male wind sickle beast. It couldn't find any way to enter. After circling around a few times and trying to use wind blades to attack the cave entrance and expand the space to no avail, the wind sickle beast suddenly began to spit wind blades into the inside frantically, as if betting that one of the blades could hurt him. After a while, the cave was covered with dust, and the rubble fell on the ground. There was no place to stand. The space inside was somewhat expanded, but the boy was still unharmed. The wind side beast looked a little depressed. The continuous wind blades consumed a lot of soul power. After seeing that it had no effect, it roared and quickly began to run around. While running, it was accompanied by a terrifying roar. However, its claws were stained with blood. Uchiha Uranium had thrown some bandages outside. Impotent and furious, "Do you want to scare me?" Puff. Holding back his smile, the boy hiding in the tent relaxed after seeing that the wind side beast could not do anything to him. He just had to wait for a few days for it to die, and then he would be safe. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. After a moment, the roar of the cruel wind side beast disappeared. It was gone. After not sensing any beasts in the radiation sensing area, the boy couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He was really a little afraid that this soul beast would not care about anything and directly spit wind blades into the cave, and then create a lot of gravel to block the cave entrance. As for the possibility that the wind sickle beast was wandering around him, waiting for him to walk out of this turtle shell at any time? Don't be ridiculous. As long as you stay around him and fight a protracted war, the soul beast will definitely die first. Rest. Fortunately, the trap at the entrance of the cave was not crushed by the gravel, otherwise I wouldn't dare to sleep directly without the trap. It's all dust outside, I really don't want to go out. After talking to himself, the boy tried his best to lie flat to ensure that the wound could heal slowly, and then fell into deep sleep. He was too tired. From being ambushed while trudging all the way, to being injured and soaked in the water and losing a lot of physical strength, to fighting desperately but being disemboweled, walking all the way to the cave, and gritting his teeth to sew himself, until he was sure that there was no danger around, he had time to rest. This experience today has already sounded the alarm in his heart. Not all soul beasts are afraid of him. The next encounter may be more terrifying than today. Surprise is coming. Updates during the day. Is it exciting? Chapter 23 Soul Ring falls from the sky. The next morning. He slept very soundly last night, but in the morning, he heard sobbing sounds all around him. As the sounds became louder and louder, he could not help but feel annoyed. However, it was this sound that suddenly woke him up. He widened his eyes and looked around in doubt. For a moment, it was hard to imagine that he woke up from such a torturous dream so easily. Who is making noise again? Hey, you are recovering well. As soon as he woke up, Uchiha Uranium first checked the degree of recovery of his body. He didn't know whether it was because of his strong physique or because he took good care of himself. There was no sign of infection. Everything was going in the right direction. Then he began to listen to the movements around him. The sound came from outside, and it was not far away. Let's go out and take a look. If the wind sickle beast is still around, the corpse must be smelly. It's safe around here. Thinking of this, Uchiha Uranium put on his washed white clothes, held onto the wall, and walked out little by little. He could only walk a little slower because of the gravel, so as not to have his wound suddenly split open or fall. After a moment, he avoided the trap and came to the door, but the changes around him made him stunned. The outside world has changed a lot. It seems that because he threw out a few bandages stained with his blood before, every stone around him, the gray rock surface is accompanied by red stripes of varying degrees, as if blood suddenly appeared from the middle and then slowly flowed down, with a frightening horror. The stripes are large and small, and the colors are dark and light, but they have one thing in common: they all exude an uncomfortable weirdness. Yes, weird. It's like a person who is afraid of heights standing on a high place, or a person who is afraid of insects seeing a millipede that is longer than a person. They feel uncomfortable both psychologically and physically. The sixth sense is already warning them that the farther away the better. The radiation concentration is a bit high. Uchiha Uranium frowned. He was no longer surprised by the changes in rocks. He had seen it several times before and even thought that it was a stone soul beast that wanted to ambush him, but the result made him laugh and cry. But it was obviously the accumulation of more than 10 days and half a month that caused such a change. Why was the surrounding area so heavily radiated in just one night? After thinking about it, Uchiha Uranium could only attribute it to the improvement of his soul power level, and the nuclear radiation also increased. In addition, his blood was an even more terrifying source of radiation. After all, just by existing, he would destroy everything around him. And it should be normal for blood to have this ability. Where's the sound? Why did it disappear as soon as I came out? You're scared? Let's go back first. Suddenly, the boy retreated into the cave. He felt something was wrong. From the special sound before to the silence now, it felt like he was deliberately let out. Sure enough, the next moment, a huge figure fell from the sky and slammed into the place where the boy was originally. If it was a few seconds slower, I'm afraid that with Uchiha Uranium's current physical condition, he would definitely not be able to avoid it, and the outcome of such a smash is imaginable. Huh? Roared damn, it's a whimsical beast. Run. Without hesitation, the boy turned around and ran deep into the passage, without any intention of confronting the whimsical beast head-on or initially confronting it. Huh? I'm scared to death. What's going on? Has it been on the rock above my head preparing to attack me? At the corner, Uchiha Uranium was breathing heavily in shock, leaning against the wall, pressing his pounding heart with his hand, fearing that this stimulated little heart would burst directly from the wound that had just been sutured. And the strange thing is that even after falling to the ground, the whimsical beast outside did not roar, did not launch wind blades, or make any other sounds. The surroundings were terribly silent. It was like an ambush. However, not long after, a smell of rotten flesh, pungent and disgusting, slowly spread from the outside to the inside, and Uchiha Uranium was stunned when he smelled this smell. He was very familiar with this smell. Soul beasts killed by radiation decay much faster than normal death. The flesh and blood inside the body will dissolve quickly, and the fur will begin to become dry and abnormally brittle. Other teeth, claws, and bones also become loose and no longer have the previous texture. What's going on? With such doubts, Uchiha Uranium slowly stuck his head out from the corner and glanced at the corpse of the soul beast at the entrance of the cave with a corner of one eye. But when he saw the faint purple light began to condense above the body of the male whimsical beast, he was a little dumbfounded. Dead? Fell to death? I couldn't believe that the whimsical beasts that were still so majestic yesterday, the male and female overlords who occupied the water source, died suddenly after just staying around him for a while. It was too fantasy and really confusing. If they are dead now, then why should I be vigilant? Damn it, I had a nightmare all night, all because of these two whimsical beasts hanging me up and beating me, eating me and then resurrecting to eat me. As a result, this happened in reality. Damn, I was shocked. Uchiha Uranium looked at the purple soul ring outside again, which had not dissipated, and then looked at the scars on his body. For a moment, he was a little confused. Why did the source of the nightmare become cold after a night? It was exactly what he thought before. Huh? I don't have to worry anymore. The latest novel is first published on 69shu.com. Uchiha Uranium breathed a sigh of relief, then slowly walked towards the outside world while holding the wall. He wanted to see what was going on. Even if he died after staying around him for too long, he wanted to see why it could resist the instinct to escape radiation. You know, other soul beasts would run away when they saw him, fearing that they would be caught, and wishing their parents would give them a few more legs. But the life and death crises he encountered were almost all the types that would not avoid nuclear radiation at all, and would just fight hard. From the exploding Albert to the Winside beast couple, the races and habitats between the two were very different. Why was that? Uchiha Uranium wanted to figure this out. Otherwise, the next attack would cost him his life. Looking at the half-rotten whimsical beast in front of him, Uchiha Uranium was silent for a while. He could vaguely see a clue from the hideous face. It didn't look like he was standing here. From the last exploding owlbear, which was almost 700 or 800 years old, to the two whimsical beasts that were more than 1,200 years old this time, it was like a giant spider's web. All creatures were trapped in its cage. Once something began to struggle, the spider web would entangle tighter and tighter until it was completely killed. And around him, it seemed that a huge conspiracy was brewing, whether it was to drive him here, or to prevent him from continuing to enter the forest, or there were other reasons driving the other party to do so. If you really want to kill him, why send only one soul beast? Wouldn't it be over if you just send a 10,000-year soul beast to crush him to death? Although he narrowly escaped death every time, he still survived. If you can send a soul beast that will not be affected by nuclear radiation, why would you kill yourself directly when you are in a coma? What is the conspiracy? Who is targeting him? What is the purpose? He didn't know, he only knew that he had to keep going forward. Thinking of this, the boy sighed slightly, and recalled the past and all these strange things in his mind. Alice, this terrible forest, life is already so difficult, it's better not to make trouble for yourself. My contract has been sent out, and the contract status will be changed in a few days. Readers who want to get Kidian coins for free, why don't you invest quickly? There will be another update in the evening. Chapter 24 Absorbing the Second Soul Ring. Forget it, don't think too much. The known conditions are limited, and no other conclusions can be drawn. Uchiha Uranium shook his head and continued to look at the purple light spot above the corpse of the whimsical beast, with a thoughtful light flashing in his eyes. Can he absorb this 1,000-year soul ring? According to the existing information on Douluo Continent, the second soul ring is basically 100 years, such as 700 or 800 years. There is no second soul ring that is 1,000 years. If you insist on absorbing it, there will only be one outcome. The physical fitness is not high enough, and the body explodes and dies. Then the question is his body, which has been strengthened by the radiation twice, strong enough to absorb it? You must know that the original Sharingan has the settings of strengthening physical fitness, improving dynamic vision, improving pupil power and increasing chakra. Although there is no such thing as chakra in Douluo Continent, the improvement of physical fitness is real, and Tang San's second soul ring in the original work is only yellow, which means that the Zuanshan Guang he practiced did not allow him to obtain a 1,000-year soul ring, and it is still yellow. So is it possible for me? While thinking, Uchiha Uranium suddenly laughed, patted his head, and suddenly woke up. That's right, the soul beasts in this place will run away immediately when they sense him. Apart from the soul ring in front of him, where else can he find soul beasts and absorb soul rings? Not to mention that the soul beast ran far away, how should he kill it? There are more things, such as the soul ring compatibility, the soul beast species and age, etc. If he is allowed to catch them, he should be able to perfectly break through the second ring around the age of 20. And the soul ring in front of him only needs to take a little risk to give himself enough protection in the future life, and no longer have the situation of sudden death. Forget it, fight. Damn it, sooner or later I will die anyway, chewing tasteless meat and drinking strange tasting water every day. I have had enough of this kind of life. The sooner I die, the sooner I will be reborn. Fight. After a moment, Uchiha Uranium made up his mind, die or die, he has had enough of this kind of life worse than death like a savage. The young man raised his right hand, trying to suppress the thumping sound and the violent heartbeat caused by his emotional excitement. He slowly gathered his soul power into his palm. Along with the invisible and colorless halo, countless microscopic particle streams, alpha rays, gamma rays, and beta rays began to rapidly convert energy around him, emitting a large amount of radiation, and more wonderful changes occurred with the fluctuation of soul power. Come on, my second soul ring, this is the first time in my life that I have gambled my life. If I lose, I will die. If I win, I will continue to live. I hope you can bring me hope to continue to survive here. Under the guidance of the invisible and colorless, rhythmic light, the soul ring of the 1,000-year-old whimsical beast slowly flew towards Uchiha Uranium. Uchiha Uranium remembered the key to absorbing soul rings in the book, and immediately sat cross-legged, focusing on his martial soul. He began to imagine his martial soul radiation eyes in his mind, focusing his attention on his eyes, waiting for the soul ring to slowly fall on him. It was the first time for him to absorb a soul ring independently without anyone to protect him, and it was a gamble. Life or death? Soon, the purple halo came to the top of Uchiha Uranium's head. Without giving him any chance to react, The purple halo suddenly shrank and turned into a golden ring only the size of a fingernail, but it was extremely illusory and directly imprinted into the boy's closed eyes, and was branded on the radiation eye martial spirit in his pupils. Uchiha Uranium felt as if his eyes were soaked in hot water. Although it was just a small matter for the palm, the fragile pupils were not comparable to the skin of the palm. A stream of hot energy rushed into his eyes crazily, and the intense heat flow instantly rushed into his body from the eyes. In an instant, his brain felt cooked. As the heat gradually moved down from the head, his internal organs were burning, and his body couldn't help but shake violently. This was much more stimulating than a sudden enlightenment. This feeling can only be described as pouring boiling water on the brain. No matter how the power of the soul ring hits your body, remember, you must stay awake. Only in this way can you better use the power of the soul ring, my son. In his mind, Uchiha Uranium recalled what his father said to him on the day he first absorbed the soul ring. The next moment, he closed his eyes, and his consciousness was completely immersed in the hot body. The pupil power in the radiation eye seemed to be stimulated by this sudden power. The brain that was originally mature suddenly felt a cold breath emanating from the depths of the pupil, and then collided with the external power inside the eye. Uchiha Uranium only felt that his eyes were sore, but he couldn't do anything. It turned out that the pupil power that the Uchiha family was proud of did not disappear in Douluo Continent. The surging soul ring power instantly baptized Uchiha Uranium's body, but the pupil power in the pupil gradually gained the upper hand. In addition to the baptism of the radiation eye, the excess soul ring power gradually went down and began to deeply strengthen his body. The consciousness suddenly brightened, and the cold breath slowly soothed the sour pupil, and the gradually swollen and painful eyes slowly eased, no longer as if they were about to burst under the impact of the soul power. Gradually, under the baptism of the flame-like soul power, tiny granulations began to grow on the frightening wounds on Uchiha Uranium's body. As the soul power continued to penetrate deeper, the wounds also recovered faster. The rips that would have taken several months to heal began to scab and fall off in less than 5 minutes, revealing pink scars. Boom! All the heat rushed out, and Uchiha Uranium felt that the hot breath seemed to have completely melted his body. After a moment, the rolling heat waves in his body slowly receded, but the comfortable feeling brought by the absorption of the soul ring was indescribable. Although he had experienced it once before, this feeling of floating in the air, as if standing on the top of bliss, was not too much no matter how many times he felt it. And Uchiha Uranium, who was concentrating on absorbing the soul ring, gradually became a little blurred, as if he was standing on the top of the cloud looking up at the sky, or as if he had fallen to the ground, enjoying the embrace of the air and the sky. More than 4 million pores on his body were fully open, greedily breathing the nectar-like air around him. The baptism of soul power had caused wonderful changes in Uchiha Uranium's body. The latest novel is published on 69shu.com. He won. After completely calming down the power of the spirit ring in his body, Uchiha Uranium gradually opened his eyes. The sky was already dark, and there was no living creature around in the dead silence. Even the bird song in the woods was barely audible. Everything seemed so strange and normal. The night brought cool air. Although it could not compare to the blissful feeling brought by absorbing the spirit ring, it made the boy squint his eyes unconsciously and quietly enjoy the beautiful night breeze. Uchiha Uranium struggled to stand up from the ground, knocked on his lumbar spine and thighs, which were not so sore because of the spirit power nourishing his body, and looked down at himself. He found that his body seemed to be a little stronger and taller because of the spirit ring. But he couldn't see any other changes in himself. According to his memory, his shoulders, skin, etc. should have changed, but he obviously couldn't see any difference. Huh? I won. I survived. Uchiha Uranium exhaled, looked at the bright stars in the sky, and laughed unconsciously. The 2 updates for today are over. Chapter 25 The Second Soul Skill, Extreme Nuclear Energy Reaction. Night. The bonfire burned slowly, making crackling sounds. It might be that there was still moisture in the wood, which caused the sound of firecrackers to continue. It was already night when Uchiha Uranium absorbed the soul ring. Unknowingly, he absorbed it for a whole day. He was even a little surprised that it took an unexpectedly long time to absorb the soul ring. Afterwards, he was also happy about the rapid recovery of his body, but he quickly adjusted his mentality and began to understand what kind of skill his second soul ring was. But before that, Uchiha Uranium, who was a little bored, unconsciously diverged his thoughts to a book he had read before, The History of the Uchiha Family. Just as Uchiha Uranium guessed, after coming to this world, the pupil power in his eyes has formed a strange fit with the Soul Master's soul power invisibly. His ancestors came from the powerful Uchiha clan who could transcend time and space. But there is no chakra in his body, only soul power. Maybe it's because of the world, or maybe chakra has turned into an energy-like existence like soul power, but the Sharingan has been preserved, the ninjutsu has been preserved, and most importantly, the pupil power in the Sharingan. This is also the fundamental reason why the family has been passed down for thousands of years. With pupil power, some secret techniques unique to Uchiha can be performed. Although it is unknown who the ancestor is, even forbidden techniques such as Izanami and Izanaji have been preserved. Could it be that Uchiha Obito went the wrong way when traveling through the Kamui space and could never go back? Uchiha Uranium once thought about this possibility. But the result is obvious. Uchiha, who opened the main Gekyo, in the same situation, fought with other soul masters, and obviously had many more abilities, whether it was the unique pupil techniques of the two eyes, or the Susanoo that changed the situation, forbidden techniques, etc., which could allow the Uchiha family to hang up other soul masters and beat them. It can even be on par with the top 3 sects. However, Uchiha Uranium, awakened the radiation eye during the awakening ceremony, the special mutant martial spirit mentioned by his father. Unfortunately, his mutation was not benign, but was heading in an unknown direction. Not only that, his first soul ring was transformed into radiation trap by the radiation eye. It can be seen that no matter what soul ring he obtained, the special nature of the martial spirit will cause it to undergo wonderful changes. This change cannot be said to be good or bad, it can only be said to be more suitable for him and the most suitable for him. His second soul ring is called Extreme Nuclear Energy Reaction. When it comes to nuclear energy reaction, we should understand what kind of thing it is. The reason is very simple. It is the most fundamental thing in a nuclear reactor, that is, the release of energy by the atomic nucleus. Whether it is fission or fusion, it is closely related to it. And how does the atomic nucleus release energy? The atomic nucleus is composed of protons and neutrons. When the atomic nucleus is bombarded by external neutrons, one atomic nucleus will absorb a neutron and split into 2 atomic nuclei with smaller mass, while releasing 2-3 neutrons. The neutrons produced by this fission will bombard another atomic nucleus, causing new fission. This continuous process is a chain reaction of fission. Chain reactions generate a lot of energy, similar to perpetual motion. This is a nuclear reaction. Similarly, the so-called nuclear radiation is the damage caused by these energies passing through the human body. Another point to mention is that the radiation intensity caused by nuclear reactions is much higher than normal. Generally, nuclear reactors are built with 6 to 8 meters of concrete on the periphery, which also contains lead blocks to isolate radiation, but there is nothing around Uchiha Uranium. He was actually almost forgetting all this knowledge. He did not have a strong memory after traveling through time, or a library in his brain that could remember all the knowledge clearly. The reason why he could recall it, to be more precise, was that he forced himself to recall it. Only by understanding can you go deeper. Only by going deeper can you master it. He couldn't even figure out what his ability was. Although this confused him for a while, it finally worked. He clearly understood how terrifying nuclear reactions were. Not to mention that the information about this soul skill in his mind had been gradually mastered. In terms of soul skills alone, this ability that transcends years is really terrifying. First of all, this is a state-enhancing soul skill. Once used, the duration will be determined by his soul power consumption. During the duration, all the atomic nuclei in his body will begin to collide violently and continuously release energy to the point of amplifying himself. It can increase his speed by 50%, his strength by 50%, greatly increase his dynamic vision, and his body trauma recovery state at a high speed. And during the duration, the Greek letter alpha rays, Greek letter beta rays, and Greek letter gamma rays in his body will spread outward and mix with the surrounding energy. Within a radius of 10 meters, all long-range physical attacks will be affected to a certain extent, causing angle deviation or kinetic energy exhaustion. Energy-based soul skills, such as White Tiger Fierce Light Wave and Phoenix Fire Line, will be greatly interfered by various rays. The closer to the center, the stronger the interference. Finally, within 100 meters around, extremely high concentrations of nuclear radiation spread. An ordinary person standing around him will fall into coma within a minute, and at most 3 minutes will collapse and die. For Soul Beast Soul Masters, this speed will not slow down much. After all, no matter how strong a body is, it can only resist for a moment. Radiation is like a snowball rolling down a snowy mountain, continuously emitting and growing bigger and bigger until it reaches a certain point and directly crushes the victim's fragile body. So after feeling the power brought by his soul skill, Uchiha Uranium fell silent. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Ask yourself, this soul skill is ridiculously strong. This may be due to the 20th level soul power absorbing the 1000-year soul ring, and the pupil power intersecting with it, resulting in a special increase. But one thing is certain, it is strengthened by the radiation eye. Huh? Why does the whimsical beast have this skill that quickly puts itself into a high-intensity attack state? Did I not finish reading the Soul Beast Encyclopedia? Uchiha Uranium felt that this soul skill did not quite match the characteristics of the whimsical beast. How could such a skill similar to the strong attack system appear on the spirit ring of the whimsical beast of the agile attack system? Uchiha Uranium took out a somewhat worn encyclopedia from his soul guide, and relying on his memory, he quickly turned to the section about the Windside Beast and began to read the contents carefully. Once the Windside Beast enters the spring mating period every 10 years, the female will begin to emit pheromones representing hormones over a wide range, and there are fewer females among the Windside Beasts, but many males. This is not what I want to read. Turning to the next page, after seeing the words above, Uchiha Uranium's pupils shrank slightly, and he already understood the source of this amplification skill. I ask for recommendations and collections every day. The number of people who read the collection is increasing every day, but the number of chapter reviews is getting fewer and fewer, and I cried. What happened? Did I write it badly? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.